just because you're from a great school doesn't necessarily mean a job is going to be given to you on a platter. If I say I'm Nishit Kamath, I'm an Arts Center alumni, हाँ आ जाओ. That doesn't mean कि मुझे job मिलने वाला है, but it helps me enter a place and
it opens the door for you. जब NID हुआ,
who should
like yeah, it was the best email that one could have thought of क्योंकि the odds were so obscenely low. मुझे लगता है मैं wedding photography कर रहा होता अभी अगर वो email नहीं आया होता ना.
I am on motorcycle और मेरे आंखों में ना पानी आ रहा था. Literally it was that emotional moment for me because
Design education in India or outside India. If you are an aspiring designer, you would have gone through this confusion. I get many queries and I can totally understand क्योंकि आज की डेट में इतने सारे डिजाइन कॉलेजेस हो गए. Outside India also there are so many colleges. पहले ऐसा होता था कि बाहर कॉलेजेस है उसके बारे में पता नहीं होता था या फाइनेंशियल कैपेसिटी नहीं होती थी. But today those factors are not valid for many of the aspiring designers and that's why they are considering education abroad as well. However, there is very limited amount of awareness and knowledge about these colleges and there is hardly anything which can compare the design education outside India with the design education inside India. And that's why we thought of shooting this very interesting podcast where we hosted two of my really good friends. One, he is my classmate from NID. His name is Abhishek Kumar. He has seen this industry for past decade. So me and him have added some of our own observations regarding the design education in India. Along with us, we had Nishit Kamath. He is an Art Center graduate. Now, if you know about Art Center, you would know that it is one of the most reputed and one of the best design colleges in the world. It is located in Pasadena, California in USA. Nishit is a graduate from there. So Nishit has added some of the very interesting observations and point of views from his angle. And I have asked him some really awkward questions where we compared the design education in India with the design education outside India. What are the pros and cons? How the fee structure differs? What are the opportunities like scholarships and all which can be availed by students, which students don't usually know about? All of those things we try to capture in this very candid, very casual and very valuable kind of podcast. If you are an aspiring designer, you need to listen to this podcast. You need to understand what are the things which are going on. Hopefully by end of this podcast, you will be in a better state of mind with better clarity to choose that particular design college for you yourself. I am very excited about this podcast. So let me know in the comment section what do you think about this kind of setup, this kind of podcast. If you guys give a positive response, we can do more of these. And that's why just let us know. And of course, if you like and share this video, it is going to help our channel a lot. So please do that. And without any further ado, let's begin this wonderful conversation.
Okay guys, first of all, thanks for coming here. बहुत unique podcast होने वाला है ये. For me also, for my team also, and क्योंकि इससे पहले एक ही गेस्ट रहता था और मैं रहता था, so it was like 2 people podcast. This is the first time when I'm gonna have 2 guests. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये थोड़ा सा candid, informal, casual podcast होना चाहिए क्योंकि हम तीनों भी more or less same batch of designers है. For the audience, I want to tell this podcast is focused on design education in India, outside India. So we have Abhishek. He is my classmate from NID. He has a wide range of experience, what happens in Indian scenario. Then we have Nishit. He has gone to Art Center. So he has his own set of perspectives and point of views. And he can be a person, you know, because many students, many aspiring people over here, they are in this phase of joining a design college. So I get so many questions on a regular basis. जहाँ पे one of the common questions is कि India में एजुकेशन लेना ठीक है या बाहर जाना बेटर? मतलब व्हाट डू यू थिंक, डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन अब्रॉड इज़ बेटर और डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन इन इंडिया इज़ एट द सेम लेवल? सो दैट इज़ वन ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस आई वांट टू एड्रेस थ्रू दिस पॉडकास्ट. एंड या विदाउट एनी फर्दर अडू, लेट्स बिगिन दिस पॉडकास्ट. वेलकम टू द डिज़ाइन पॉडकास्ट गाइज. जिनको पता नहीं है, वी शॉट द फर्स्ट एवर पॉडकास्ट फॉर दिस चैनल. दैट वॉज विद अभिषेक. फ्यू ऑफ द ऑडियंस माइट नो अबाउट हिम, बट स्टिल for those who don't know about you, you can give a little glimpse of what was your journey, how did you got into design, which college you got into, where exactly you went, कुछ एक हाथ 2 projects, कुछ experiences, कुछ भी capture करना हो, so that audience will get a good hang of what is your background. So we can start with Nishit.
Alright, so I'm an industrial designer by background with specialization in transportation systems design. And मेरा इंट्रोडक्शन कैसा हुआ था टू डिज़ाइन वाज दैट इन 12th स्टैंडर्ड I was studying for obviously the 12th standard exams, and at the same time tha CET at that point, right? And I still remember I was like, मैंने mechanical engineering का एक book खोला था and then रो के पढ़ा because I was just like, this is not going to work. I don't understand half of this. What do I do? But I had to study either way because at that time you only knew medicine, engineering, and commerce, and then there was arts, of course. You know?
Yeah.
So, and this was, I'm talking about 2006. And I remember one afternoon in, it was in January, I believe. I was watching Discovery Channel, and I came across this one show which showed Art Center, and it showed about car design. And the first thing that came through my head was that, you know, there is something called car design. There's a place where I can design cars without having to use mathematics or engineering to a certain degree. Wow. And I called my mom. My mom was in the kitchen. I said, Mom, I finally found something I want to do. So she's like, let's look it up and see if we can find it here in India. That time, internet was very limited. You know, it was a broadband tha, but even searching on the internet was very limited as opposed to the vast amounts of information we have today. So I remember opening up, and then we realized NID का exam है a few days later, and उसका submission है tonight, last day.
What are you saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
my mom started crying. She was just like, finally he found something to do, and वो भी उसका आज ही submission है. Luckily, my dad found a way to apply online, and he helped me out with it, and we gotten to at least go for the exam, NID का exam. So that was my first entry into understanding कि there's something called design beyond interior design, beyond fashion design. Because those people knew interior design, which they mostly say is architecture.
Yeah.
And fashion design to sabko pata tha by then.
Yeah.
But product design karke hai, industrial design and all is something I learned only when I applied for the NID ka exam, which I didn't get through, but NID ka exam gave me an understanding on what they may be looking for. And there were some very creative questions in there. I remember, like, you know, चप्पल का रबर स्ट्रैप के साथ क्या कर सकते हो, कौन से और यूजेस हैं, you know, interesting stuff like that. And then there were some questions like draw an elephant next to a man. I think that was for proportions. These are a few things I remember. That's when I think as I was searching for colleges, I then came across, I didn't get into NID, so I came across Raffles in Bombay. I had a look at Raffles. I loved it because the Raffles in Bombay specifically was working with recycled materials, reusable. So they'd use cardboard, you know, जो भी used, worn out चीजें थे, उन सबको कैसा repurpose करना, which is something I absolutely enjoy, and I've been doing it as a child. My parents also taught me never to throw stuff, just to sit and fix. But then the opportunity came for my dad to move to Thailand. And when we moved to Thailand, we found out that Raffles had Raffles in Bangkok, and they had product design. And I joined there, and that's when my entire design line started.
Okay. So how did the art center happen?
Art Center. So, see, obviously, when I first saw Art Center, it was my dream college. But back then, any of us knew कि US जाने के लिए तभी it was an expensive proposition. I'm talking about 2006. Very few people could afford it. So when I came back to India in 2010, and I was working at Godrej Interior, at some point after designing furniture, various different types of furniture, I realized that, okay, you know, somewhere my inclination is still towards cars. And somewhere I still want to go to the college that inspired me in design in the first place. So 2010 ko dekha, but Art Center did not have a master's program. They had a bachelor's program.
Achha.
And at that time, you know, the thought process that goes through your head is, एक bachelor तो already किया है मैंने, दूसरा bachelor करना ज़रूरी है क्या? Is it worth the money? Is it worth putting in that? And दो bachelors लेके मैं क्या करूँ?
What's the value?
That's the methodology we have in our heads even till today.
Right.
Although it can be useful, हम लोग सोचते नहीं, we are looking at the degree at the end of it and say ये degree का क्या करूँ, 2 degree लेके क्या करूँ in undergraduate. So in 2012, when I discovered, like when I'd actually quit Godrej by then, and I was looking at applying for colleges, I'd applied to RCA, Royal College of Art London, I applied to Art Center. NID I didn't apply to because it requires the common entrance design exam.
Achha.
And I have a fundamental issue with it. Okay, so that's the reason I did not apply for it. But I also wanted to apply for CCS Detroit, which is
Achha.
College for Creative
Okay.
Studies.
Yeah. I remember.
So in my list, it was like Royal College of Art, because I had been to Royal College of Art and I fell in love with the place.
Okay.
When I went there, it's a design. It's like how you guys feel at NID is what I felt over there at RCA. When I saw the material, I saw the way people are talking, the language they use towards design, and I fell in love with that whole vibe.
Okay.
So RCA was number one. Art Center I had was because of my affinity to introduction to design. So Art Center, and third was CCS in my mind. These three.
Achha.
ऐसा था.
Okay.
So I applied. RCA got through the first round and the second round. Third round pe I didn't get through because there was a lot of competition at that point.
It attracts people from all over the world.
Yes, and there were people with 5 or 6 years of work experience. By
Yeah.
then I had maybe 2. But there were people with 5 and 6 years of work experience and who were super passionate, like right down to every single detail. They were so passionate. You understand why it's hard.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
इट्स वेरी कॉमन नो, मतलब मैं भी जब सोचता हूँ
हाँ.
कि इंडिया में ऐसा होता है कि मास्टर्स के लिए जो लोग आते हैं दे हैव लाइक लेट्स से एट द मैक्स 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience, and that too in non-design fields. So but बाहर मैं जब भी स्टूडेंट्स को देखता हूँ, so they are the people who are already working in the industry for like let's say 4-5 years. Recently one of my friends he went to RCA only I guess, and he had roughly 8 or more than that years of experience as a designer, and after that he went there to pursue another masters. So ये बहुत common है. Why is it not so common in India?
You have to dial it back to the thought process and also अपना cultural aspirations जो हैं. When we were growing up, you'd remember हमारा कैसा, मतलब overall parents के कैसे थे? Get your bachelor's, get your master's, right? And then you can get your job sorted, but you need a master's to survive. By the time we came in, you needed a master's to thrive.
Correct.
Today you need a master's to survive, and then even that is not enough for you to thrive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, तो वहाँ पे उनका सोच कैसा था from what I gathered from seeing people from different countries, different mindsets. They came from a mindset of I want to be really good at what I do. I will get a job. One way or another, I will get a job. That was the thought process. यहाँ पे I think was will we get a job? वहाँ पे their thought process was I'm going to get a job one way or another. Even if I have to work at a Starbucks, so be it. But I am going to get a job. So I'm not worried. I want to be really good at what I want to do, and I want to be an evangelist at it. मतलब I want to be able to do so good at it that it basically consumes me as a person.
Yeah.
Just to add one more thing to this, when we went to Art Center again for our project there, so me and Abhishek, we traveled to LA. That's where we met. That's where we met for the first time. So वहाँ पे we had a chance to meet Scott Robertson, and we asked him this question that how come most of the celebrated creative minds happen to be from this part of the world, like California. So he had a very Abhishek might remember that. So he had a very interesting answer to that. कि उसने बोला कि all around the world the common understanding of success is that अगर आपको पैसा मिल रहा है, अच्छी सैलरी मिल रही है, then you are considered successful. Whereas in that part of the world, California, he said that यहाँ पे लोग अपसेट होते हैं, लोग आपको अनसक्सेसफुल मानते हैं इफ़ यू आर नॉट फॉलोइंग योर पैशन. वेल दैट्स व्हाट ही सेड. सो ही सेड वहाँ पे ना ऐसा है कि अपब्रिंगिंग में ही ऐसा है कि वंस समबडी डिसाइड्स कि मुझे ये करना है, देन दे विल गो ऑल इन. वेयरएज हमारा इंडियन अगर माइंडसेट अपब्रिंगिंग से ही लेके हमेशा सर्वाइवल ही कंसर्न रहता है कि आपको जॉब कितना मिल रहा है, पैसा कितना मिल रहा है, तो उसके लिए मास्टर्स करना ज़रूरी है. तो अगर मास्टर्स करना है तो एक्सपीरियंस क्यों ले रहे हो. वहाँ पे हो सकता है कि वो इवन आफ्टर वर्किंग फॉर लाइक 7-8 years इन द इंडस्ट्री उनको लगता होगा कि नहीं मुझे और सीखना है और मुझे एक्सेल करना है मेरी चोजन फील्ड में. तो शायद वो एक माइंडसेट लेके भी वो उसमें घुसते होंगे.
To an extent I agree with Scott in that regard because हाँ उनका mindset, like I said, उनका mindset ही अलग है. हम लोग का when we were growing up, what we heard around us was अगर आप अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं लोगे तो कोई और लेने वाला है. अभी
Dog eat dog world.
हाँ, if you wake up and you don't run towards that opportunity, somebody
हाँ.
else is going to outrun you, and even if you are running the fastest, someone else is going to outrun you.
Yeah.
Right.
यही है सीख जो हम लोग को कॉलेज में भी मिल जाता है, स्कूल में भी मिल जाते हैं, and we apply that everywhere today. Like right from our education to even driving in traffic is all the same thing. Everybody, so like अगर मैं नहीं पहुंचा ना, कोई मेरा देखभाल नहीं करेगा. So that mindset unfortunately runs pretty deep in all of us to a certain degree, and it is something that is also we are able to shed it to quite a degree when we are outside of the country.
अच्छा.
Because for the first time when you're outside of the country, you don't feel like first few times you might do the same pattern that you're used to. Okay, but after some time what's going to happen is you're going to be like, oh, there's nobody putting me in a corner, or you know, मैं भूखा नहीं हूँ, people are looking out for me and ensuring मैं ठीक हूँ. So I don't need to put my walls up anymore. Now I can bring my walls down a little bit. थोड़ा रहेगा यहाँ पे उधर, but I can keep my walls down a little bit and actually focus on things I want to do without having to look back to see ki who's coming after me.
Okay. Interesting. So just to complete your story and journey, so उसके बाद में art center, then what happened after art center?
What one expects is, you know, after you get out of one of the world's best colleges, you have a job lined up for you, you have your life lined up, you find your partner, you settle down, you have, you know, you get called for interviews and podcasts like this, and you do really well, you write books, etc. and all of that. I wish my journey went that way. But I was in a new field at that point. I was studying like transportation systems design was something absolutely new. And that time we had to create the jobs. So I went through a tough time. Imagine trying to explain to the car companies that at some point you will have to think about systems like customer centric design. And what I mean is not the UX UI. It comes down to how the person thinks and then how that can change a person's driving, especially when you're looking at, you know, in ICE engines versus electric engines, the way a person drives. The electric engine is more go-kartish. So all these small subtle details which you don't pay attention to, they all add every bit of detail. And when you're trained in that, you're trained in systems to understand, okay, gig economy hai. You're looking at gig economy, how to apply the gig economy into vehicle design so that your vehicles can help somebody who's doing Zomato ka delivery, or is helping some in the States. You had Instacart, Uber Eats, Yelp to help them out, because the standard vehicle wouldn't apply there. We are accommodating it, but it wouldn't apply. You needed specific. If you had specific design features catered towards it, you would have to work on that. Imagine trying to explain this to car companies who did not see a need for it back then. So the way they used to look at us was that, see, we were not sketch artists. We were not, for the lack of a better word, we weren't sketching at all. We were actually creating and doing research.
We were problem solvers, to be honest.
Problem solvers.
Yeah.
So there was no space for us in public transportation, or, you know, with the authorities. A place like ours did not exist because they mostly had either engineers or architects or policy makers to bring a designer in there. They'd be like, what will you do? Because in their heads, a designer is a person who sketches and comes up with beautiful stuff. How does that help me when in transferring 10,000 people by train?
डिजाइनर का आधा काम साइकोलॉजी भी है और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग भी है और कम्युनिकेशन भी है, more than just the visual skills that they bring to the table.
So to come down to it, it was tough. I applied to 100 companies and didn't get a job. And finally, 2 companies offered me a job, one in the morning, one in the evening.
Achha.
Okay, one was minimum wage.
Okay.
Which they offered as an intern. They were like, you do this, where I was working on car design research. And the evening job was with drones, to develop drones, because my thesis was on drones. So to understand how drones could be used in systems perspective for medicine, for surveillance and all that. So I took those. I took up the work. Free tha, but I took up the work because I needed it for my visa. Otherwise, I would not have been able to work. And imagine that from when I graduated, my employment authorization started, and I had 60 days to find a job.
Wow. Okay.
Day 59, I get both of them. I had already packed my bags and everything and kept कि इसका नहीं हो गया तो बोरिया बिस्तर बांध के I'm coming, I have to come back. It is a very shitty feeling if you haven't felt it. Day 59, one company I went at 6 o'clock in the morning while Jay Leno's video shoot was happening with them.
Okay.
And I went and I pleaded for a job. And the second company came back to me saying, hey, you can help us with this. So thanks to them, I managed to retain my work there.
Okay.
And then I had to build up. That's the first time I realized just because you're from a great school doesn't necessarily mean a job is going to be given to you on a platter.
Yeah.
Okay. And in very rare cases, when a person's really good at what they do and they stand out, they're willing to stand out, they're willing to showcase, is when you get picked up by a company probably before you graduate as well. That happened to me when I was in Thailand. But at Art Center, there was way too much work for me to do, to think about doing work on the side just before
Basically,
graduation.
your personal branding and marketing.
So many things, I think.
So many things.
Skills, work, your
luck also
networking.
plays a role.
Luck
Network.
also, yeah.
I had a full network.
Huh.
Even
Art Center, I'm pretty sure ki they would have given a full access to
And
alumni and all.
he was pretty popular from what I remember. He took us to this party also.
one thing I love doing is networking.
Yeah.
But imagine this: despite having a large network, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
Which the reason why I'm stating this is because I've had students come to me for design education saying, मुझे job मिलेगा क्या इसके बाद? And I'm like, I wish I could have an answer for you. हो सकता है, नहीं हो सकता है, वो तुम्हारे पे depend करता है, and also depends on what is the situation of the industry at that point, and also depends on what are you studying, and finally it depends on luck. No matter what people can say, whether you believe it or not, that right place, right time is the most important thing. Some people have gotten in right place, right time. Some people have gotten in through influence. Some people have gotten in because there was an availability. The rest of them have struggled to get there.
Chalo, fast forward. What do you do now? Just to give the audience an idea about what do you do at this moment?
I run two companies. One is VNV Print Lab, where we design molds for chocolates, cakes, desserts, and ice creams. And custom molds, my goal is for the Indian market, for them to have their very own designs that signify Indian culture in general. So I work with a lot of bakers, a lot of pastry chefs, and hotels from India to build these out. And I've also worked internationally as well with Michelin star restaurants in some cases, when they want certain look and feel to step up. Like they want their dessert to look like a potato, for example. So stuff like that. And my second venture is recent, it's fairly new. It's in electric charging for buses and trucks.
Oh, interesting.
We do for cars as well, but we are focused on buses and trucks because I believe, and so my partners believe, that India is a country that will adopt electric mobility the fastest, and it is a requirement over here. And especially in terms of mass transit, it is a dire need at this point. We want because a lot of people need to travel A to Z in a comfortable manner, in a fast manner, and in a manner that is easily accessible.
And with the 2030 predicted regulation on electrifying the whole fleet, better prepare for it now, right?
And actually it's interesting, as in my sister stays in Netherlands and she was saying this EV, this entire revolution, it starts from public transport because it gets little easy for customer, like people also, because when you start selling the personalized vehicles, so सब लोग पता नहीं उसको कितनी अच्छे से accept कर पाएंगे. Like in India also we are seeing, there are a lot of issues like range anxiety and things like that. Whereas once you have a public infrastructure, charging infrastructure especially, तो फिर वो एक system की तरह चलता है, and then slowly it will boil down to personal vehicles.
Yes. Although personal vehicles is what currently a lot of people are looking at. Like when you think of, when you see a lot of electric vehicles now, you're mostly seeing personal vehicles and you're seeing buses. If you see our entire Shivneri stretch, Shivneri, Ashwamedh, the new buses coming in, they are mostly electric buses.
And it's insanely improved. Like you just ride in those buses, you don't even feel a thing.
Right.
No vibrations, no nothing, just a smooth ride.
जाना पड़ेगा.
Yeah, and the interesting part in this, I know it has nothing to do with the design education. Okay, sorry guys, but the interesting part is that it's not about having public infrastructure charging systems. Okay, a lot of people prefer charging at home.
Acha, okay.
Okay, so they have, see, all of us are pretty systemic creatures. We all have our habits, we all have our time. रात को हम लोग सोएंगे ही. Very few people जाके गाड़ी चलाएंगे एक्सेट्रा. जो चलाएगा वो उसके हिसाब से उसका खुद का पैटर्न रहेगा. So in those scenarios, it doesn't, like especially in Pune, there was a recent article about how the PMC has set up an n number of electric charging stations, and they have been barely able to make any revenue off it because most people prefer charging at home.
Oh.
Yeah.
It is an article in a recent, I think it was
Maximum
Pune
use
Pulse.
case.
Acha,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's believe me, it could be its own very topic at one point.
Okay. We can discuss all that in a
Later.
separate podcast. But coming back to Abhishek, okay, Abhishek, as Nishit told his story, take us through your journey briefly and end at a point where you can tell everyone what do you do currently, what are you up to at this moment.
Basically, I'll give you a nutshell version first. I had a dream from my childhood to be one particular thing in my life. And when that dream came true, I rejected it.
What was that?
So since I was 5 years old or 3 years old, I had a knack for sketching cars only. ठीक है?
Okay.
Perspective नहीं आता था, बहुत सारी चीजें नहीं आती थी, but I would be sketching everywhere, and only cars or buses or trains, anything with wheels,
The cycle
or even aircraft, huh? And it was, I didn't know this field existed, but I couldn't sketch humans, I couldn't sketch plants or nature, but I could sketch cars. And it just had a, like, you know, तुम्हारा एक dream होता है, but you never speak about it, and you're just what do you say? It's brewing in you. So throughout my schooling days, and it was probably a way to medicate also. Through the chaos of schooling and whatnot. So मेरे हर copy के back के 4 pages would be car sketches.
This I can resonate with.
So and sometimes my parents would be frustrated and they'll like tear those off, or they'll like.
Oh shit.
Anyway, so it was such a deep dream, huh? And it all culminated in the short term. Like I went to, like, my parents said engineering kar lo, so I studied software engineering, where I tried different forms of art and design, like filmmaking, graphic design, running design fests, lot of things. But then it hit me at the end of my engineering, I want to be a designer. I want to pursue that dream now. Time for that. Clock is ticking. And just like you, I found out about NID exists very last minute, but somehow I had 1 month to prepare for it. So I took a coaching, I prepared for NID, and I got luckily accepted into the masters for product design and transportation design. And I went for the dream, moonshot. Okay. And that's where I met you, Saket, and eventually, like, through that journey. But yeah, in the nutshell, how I ended up rejecting it was, I got a very dream opportunity in my internship at Tata Elxsi in Bangalore, where I was lucky enough to work directly under Nick Talbot and work on a Jaguar Land Rover project directly. And he was very impressed with the graphic skills especially, so he offered me a job with JLR in Gaydon. But I never pursued the paperwork, I never went for it, because that was a time, and I'll give you a little more detail into the journey why I never went for it. Because for a guy in his mid-20s, getting that job offer is great. My other 3 interns that I had that were there with me, they also got that offer. 3 of us were supposed to go, but then I didn't take it. So the backstory is, that's how entrepreneurship was born in me, and taking leaps of faith started becoming a thing. Because after engineering, took a leap of faith for NID. Then at NID, I took a leap of faith for entrepreneurship, and even in entrepreneurship, took different leaps of faith. So so you never know what dream you are holding for a long time, and when you have leveled up to that dream, maybe one day you just don't want that anymore.
I can tell it's very impressive कि उस moment पे when you are in that phase of doing your graduation project and all, मतलब you guys will also agree कि बहुत confusing time होता है. मतलब कोई surety नहीं है कि कहाँ पे जाना है, क्या होना है. And back then we were all worried about कि हम लोगों को job मिलेगा. As you said, we were also applying to many companies and all that. And when we were busy in doing that, this guy was in another world only. Like he was doing some projects, as he mentioned in Tata Elxsi. He had his first studio. So those 3 interns, if I am not wrong, he started his first studio there with them. It's called Studio.
No,
Helmet or something.
one guy was an employee and one like was our senior from TAD only, NID.
That was
third
called Studio Helmet or something.
Studio Helmet, yeah. Because we think in our helmets while riding our bikes.
So see,
that was the tagline.
So that's
clever.
That's pretty impressive. See, Studio Helmet is such a clever name also, that it's because all those 3 guys having this automotive background, then doing something.
Thought we could change the world, by offering better
So तभी
design.
से इसका वो entrepreneurship वाला spark हमें दिख गया था.
This is, how old were you?
25.
Yeah.
I have
24.
I have a similar thing which I did at 21 as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when I was in at Raffles, just before graduation, by then I had already started to do some side jobs because I wanted to buy some things, etc. And the way I could do it was that. So I had gotten a couple of opportunities to design products like wine coolers and sanitizers, because that time bird flu tha na. I had gotten that, and then slowly along the way I developed a couple of clients. So there was one client who came to me and 2 of my friends, because we all would work for a firm there, and we used to work as freelancers. So they came to us and they were like, listen, I have a house that I have been trying to sell for the longest time. I can't seem to sell it. Can you guys come and do a nice brochure for me? And we being designers, हम लोग ये थोड़ा कीड़ा है, तो we were like, ये brochure से काम नहीं चलने वाला है. The house has to look
give a bigger
appealing.
vision.
Yeah, it has to be appealing. So we did very basic things of like changing the light bulbs from white to yellow, just putting a few plants here and there, cleaning the sofa and all. And we took nice wide-angled photos, which were like slightly fisheye. Now today, if you see it and all these things, everybody does it. But that time we had done it with a DSLR only.
It was a rarity, right? Like
it was a rarity. And we put it all together. There was a product designer, 2 product designers, and 1 graphic designer on board. We put the thing together. We created the brochures, and within about 2 weeks of us making that, the house sold. So the client was excited. So he's like, "Abhi दूसरा घर." तो दूसरा घर भी same हो गया. Like तीसरा है. So that was my first ever business that we started, where it was like 3 of us go in as I forgot what you call it. It's like upgrading the house for photographs, basic upgradation, interior decoration.
Okay.
And it gets sold. That
interesting.
Yeah,
it's a business now with Airbnb.
Airbnbs and all. No, there are
Yeah.
Netflix shows and all also, where there's bunch of interior designers. They go pimp up the
house.
They'll just.
there were those long before also. I remember Discovery Pay, there were people who do all sorts of things like pneumatic suction tubes for beer to land up on your thing. But yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so coming back to your story, where were we? Studio Helmet. Okay.
Studio.
So yeah, that was like a very experimental, juvenile kind of an experiment. कि बस कर लिया friends के साथ. Lot of passion was exchanged, and we convinced some really big people to give us some work, in Hyderabad and some other places. Did the corporate rebranding for a 1,000 crore group company as like newbies, but anyways, so that gave me, and us time pe, I saw the magic of entrepreneurship. Ki unpredictable tha, but it was like, oh God, like something is needed and a payment has gotten cleared, and this thing now I have access to, rather than just relying on the drug of like a monthly salary. Ki usi time pe aa rahi hai salary. And later I can connect it to some more realizations, which I can tell you later. But उस time पे मुझे नहीं पता था why I thought that way. But it was a little different from maybe most of my peers or friends that I saw, who would be like calculating things, doing things in a regular manner. But I guess I was always like go deep in or nothing, like all in or nothing kind of.
Zero or one approach.
Yeah. And I'm not saying one approach is better than the other. बट अगर आपको अपना नेचर रियलाइज करना होता है कि आपके पास लाइक आपकी टेंडेंसी क्या है, व्हाट्स द टेंडेंसी वेयर यू आर थ्राइविंग, क्योंकि nobody can beat you at being you, right? So if I'm trying to copy where Nishit is good or Saket is good,
Yeah.
maybe I will not succeed. But if I really know myself, so the journey happened that way. I knew my tendencies and I started pursuing them against conventional wisdom. So basic journey is I lived across all over India during growing up. From Delhi to Bangalore, I've lived in most of the big cities in the middle. I then did my undergrad in software engineering. So I had a basic understanding of how computers work, and this will come into the journey in a second. And also experimented with mediums like filmmaking, photography, graphic design, and even did a lot of experimental Photoshop. I would just look at a design and just mimic it on Photoshop and learn all the tools.
Best way to learn.
Self-taught. So rose, I think before I even thought about joining an ID, last 1 year I would spend 3-4 hours every night just casually exploring that hobby. And I would really encourage, because we are addressing students who want that, right? So find what hobby works for you, right? And just see, date karo na us hobby ko, and nahi chal raha to dusri hobby ko date karo. So for me back then it was Photoshop, and I unknowingly that 1 year of 3 hours every night gave me advanced level understanding of all the features of Photoshop. I will not say I was like great at whatever the output, but copying things gave me that confidence. Even when I came to an ID, I felt a little confident in the things around that part. So then luckily an ID, we know like only 15 people get, or 12 people get, 15 people get into one branch, and it's very hyper competitive, right? So getting into it, मैंने सोचा नहीं था. In fact, I thought maybe I'll get into IIT or something much easier. But जब NID हुआ,
Who should
like it was the best email. I guess it was the best email that one could have thought of, क्योंकि the odds were so obscenely low कि that email could have changed your life. मुझे लगता है मैं wedding photography कर रहा होता अभी. अगर वो email नहीं आया होता ना, I would have taken my photography career and done wedding photography.
My goodness.
But I'm kidding. Yeah. So that's where your one opportunity can change your life so much. One small decision. Right? Like अगर इसने आर्ट सेंटर की डॉक्यूमेंट्री नहीं देखी होती, तो maybe he would have not gone there, gone elsewhere. Knowledge was so limited, right?
No, but what you just mentioned about NID ka, like when you got the email and the ecstatic, it put shivers through my spine, because that's how I felt when Art Center arrived.
Yeah.
Because when RCA said no and CCS said you're not ready for masters, you have to do that. I was like, Art Center to aayega nahi, right? Then when Art Center ka they didn't send an email.
Yeah.
They sent a actual package. And I remember pulling in one evening into my aunt's house. I stayed at my aunt's house in Bombay at that point. Pulling in one evening with my mom, and the security says, "आपके लिए एक parcel आया है." So I looked and I said कि ये California से आया है. तो I was like, "Mom, ये शायद से Art Center का है and rejection letter है, मुझे नहीं देखना है." She's like, खोल के ऐसे नहीं, आप फेंक दो, मुझे नहीं देखना है. I don't want to see it. Then she opened it and she's like, she pulls out and it's like a green and a orange pamphlet.
The branding was orange.
Saying congratulations on it.
Wow.
And she's like, congratulations. I looked at it and I said, maybe they're saying congratulations, you've been rejected. मेरे को नहीं देखना है. And she was like, shut up. Opened it, and I still remember that feeling. So when you told me that, I think all of us have had those feelings where when you get into a college, you've been dying for.
Actually, मतलब
तेरा कैसा था?
मेरा वही मैं सोच रहा था अभी, मतलब बिकॉज दिस स्टोरी रिमाइंड्स मी माय एक्सपीरियंस ऑल्सो कि मैं एक्चुअली GRE के लिए प्रिपेयर कर रहा था. सो दिस वाज अ स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड पाथ फॉर लाइक एटलीस्ट इन माय कॉलेज एवरीबडी वाज डूइंग इंजीनियरिंग. मतलब मैंने मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग की है लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ अस. उसके बाद में सबका यही था कि सब एक एक करके मास्टर्स के लिए अप्लाई कर रहे हैं, ईदर IIT और GRE. दैट वाज द स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड पाथ फॉर एवरीवन. तो IIT से ज़्यादा मुझे ऐसा लग रहा था कि आई वांट गो आउटसाइड इंडिया, एक्सप्लोर, गेट दैट एक्सपीरियंस एंड ऑल. सो मैं GRE के लिए फुल फ्लेज्ड प्रिपेयर कर रहा था एंड आई हैड अ डे जॉब. सो मैं टाटा टेक्नोलॉजीज़ में जॉब कर रहा था एंड साइड बाय साइड आई वाज प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर GRE. और घर वालों को भी यही पता था कि ये MS करेगा, US जाएगा, स्टूडेंट लोन लेगा, सॉर्टेड था, मतलब यही था मतलब पाथ सबके लिए. इन बिटवीन NID का भूत चढ़ गया क्योंकि क्योंकि बीच में क्या हुआ कि टाटा में आई मेट दिस वन गाय who was preparing for NID for past 2 years, and that was his third attempt. So he had collected all the resources, books. उस टाइम पे PDF सॉफ्ट कॉपी वो पेन ड्राइव में हम लोग ट्रांसफ़र करते थे, तो उसने एक पेन ड्राइव दिया एंड दैट वाज लाइक कि अच्छा ऐसा ऐसा है. मुझे तो पता भी नहीं था कि डिज़ाइन क्या होता है एंड ऑल दैट, बट व्हेन आई अंडरस्टूड कि ये बंदा 2 साल से प्रिपेयर कर रहा है तो कुछ तो होगा. बट मैं इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में भी बहुत ज़्यादा क्रिएटिव साइड में इन्वेस्टेड था, हमेशा मैं कुछ ना कुछ करता था. सो देयर वाज अ फेलो बैचमेट हु हैड जॉइंड MIT का डिज़ाइन, प्रोडक्ट डिज़ाइन. तो मैंने उससे पूछा, देन आई अंडरस्टूड कि ये तो फुल फ्लेज्ड करियर बन सकता है इसमें, एंड इसमें तुमको स्केच करना होगा एंड ऑल दैट. बट स्टिल आई वाज नॉट श्योर. तो मैंने ऐसे ही एक लास्ट अटेम्प्ट करके IIT और NID दे दिया था. और स्टूडियो टेस्ट के लिए मैं दोनों कॉलेजेस में जब गया तो मुझे IIT लगा कि एक और इंजीनियरिंग होगा यहाँ पे. बट NID में जाने के बाद वो पूरा क्रिएटिव, वो डिस्प्ले, क्ले मॉडल्स, वो सब देख के मैं ऐसे मतलब अंदर से इतना वो खुश हो गया था ना. आई वाज लाइक कि दिस इज़ प्रोबेबली द प्लेस फॉर मी. बट स्टिल नॉट श्योर, क्योंकि वहाँ पे जो मतलब साथ में आए थे, जैसे अभिषेक भी था, दे हैड आइडिया अबाउट इट, दे वर टेकिंग लाइक दे हैव टेकन कोचिंग. एंड ये मेरे साथ में जो बंदा था, मेरा जो रूममेट था वहाँ पे स्टूडियो टेस्ट के लिए, ही हैड लाइक फुल पोर्टफोलियो, प्रिंटेड पोर्टफोलियो विद फोटोशॉप रेंडर्स इनटू इट. एंड मेरे को फोटोशॉप की नॉलेज भी नहीं थी, मतलब मैंने सुना भी नहीं था. एंड आई वाज लाइक कि ठीक है, मैं तो अभी मेरा शॉट दे रहा हूँ, आई डोंट नो इफ इट्स गोना हैपन और नॉट. लॉन्ग स्टोरी शॉर्ट, जब वो रिजल्ट आया उसके 10 या 15 दिन के बाद में मेरा GRE का एग्ज़ाम था. एंड आई वेंट टू दिस साइबर कैफ़े, क्योंकि तब इंटरनेट साइबर कैफ़े में जाना पड़ता था. सो साइबर कैफ़े में गया, वो NID की वेबसाइट ओपन की, मेरा रोल नंबर डाला और वहाँ पे वो लिख के आया कि कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस, यू हैव बीन सिलेक्टेड एंड ऑल दैट. एंड वहाँ से मेरा घर, मतलब मेरा रूम जो था, इट वॉज नॉट मोर देन 5 मिनट्स का राइड. ओके, आई एम ऑन मोटरसाइकिल और मेरे आँखों में ना पानी आ रहा था. लिटरली इट वॉज दैट इमोशनल मोमेंट फॉर मी, बिकॉज आई न्यू कि मैं अभी GRE देने वाला हूँ. आई न्यू कि मेरा MS हो जाएगा, आई विल गो टू USA एंड ऑल दैट. एजुकेशन लोन सब कुछ सॉर्ट करके रखा था. बट इनसाइड मी आई वॉज वेरी क्लियर कि आई एम नॉट गोना एंजॉय डूइंग दिस. एंड आफ्टर कमिंग फ्रॉम NID आई वॉज लाइक कि मुझे यही करना है, मेरा इसमें हो जाना चाहिए जैसे भी है. सो या वो किसी और पॉडकास्ट के लिए रखते हैं. बट या व्हेन आई गॉट दैट कंफर्मेशन कि मेरा हो गया है, इट वॉज वेरी इमोशनल. सो I think we all have experienced that. Anyways, sorry for drifting away.
Not at all. I think, believe me, you guys will have to go through multiple podcasts, just letting you know. Okay, but this is an interesting thing I noticed just now as we were talking. The three of us over here, all of us did work apart from the work that we were assigned to do.
For
right?
sure.
Even if we studied certain things, like if you are studying software engineering, you were doing things on the side. When you were studying mechanical engineering, from what I gather, you were doing things on the side.
Yeah.
And same when I was doing product design, I was doing things on the side. So to me, I feel like a lot of it ties into getting into the college that you want. All of us got into the colleges we wanted eventually. We also did a lot of work on the side. So curiosity and the ability to explore,
I agree.
That
is 100%.
I agree. And now the fight is actually keeping that curiosity going on, because as you grow older, you become a little like, लगता है कि सारी चीजें obvious हैं. Cynicism.
That's a beautiful thing. Like whenever we hang out together, no. So for those who don't know, but we keep on hanging out together a lot. Like we keep meeting. We all stay in Pune only. But हमारे जब भी ऐसे मीटअप्स होते हैं, वी एंड अप टॉकिंग so much about what is going on. There is so much curiosity, there is so much hunger in all of us to learn new things. Like for example, this podcast also, this podcast was just an experiment to learn something new. You guys are also like that. You are also, even now, you are not settling onto one thing. There are multiple projects, there are multiple things which we are all doing. So I think you rightly said that curiosity and hunger, I think that was something which was very evident, कि जिसकी वजह से शायद वो हमें ड्रीम कॉलेज मिल गया. Anyways, sorry to stop, but I think because we have this focus, I think we'll have to move little faster onto that. We'll keep all these discussions for that other podcast. But
Other
anyway, coming back to your story, just quickly tell everyone that what are you up to now? What do you do? And what is the path that you are onto?
Yeah. So, long story short, I think after NID, I again decided to take a leap of entrepreneurship, and this was back in 2014. So, I ended up fortunately meeting a lot of successful entrepreneurs and helping them figure out product kaise banta, like digital products or their digital presence. So, I became a very big evangelist using design as a tool to help companies, entrepreneurs into now channelizing themselves in the online world by launching products.
For those who don't know, can you tell what is evangelist?
An evangelist is a person who has done some work in an industry or a field, and then they really help businesses or personalities promote it further. So just in my case, I, because of my software engineering background and my design education, I could club the two and start telling people how to build good products, digital products, apps, web products, UX, UI जो बोलते हैं. तो 50-60 clients later, and some of them being really big companies, some of them being very small entrepreneurs. So अलग-अलग type के struggles होते हैं कहीं पे, and you're managing people, the psychology. Anyways, so that muscle as it got built, I think the windfall started coming after COVID. Right before COVID, I also did a couple of jobs with some good studios like Initia by Minda Group, and Let's Transport, InstaWork in the US. So some of the companies I did some full-time jobs with to really understand the commitment of a full-time team working in that capacity, being mission-driven. So that's when I stepped away from entrepreneurship for a while and did some jobs to really understand that bit. But after 2020, I think something shifted, and I got back into entrepreneurship. And around 2019 only, I had cracked a client like ICICI Bank. So convincing such a big 37 billion organization to give you a critical project as their main mobile app. So working on such projects, then worked with their insurance arm, worked with their different domains, the business apps. So built a suite of products with them. And also had some more exposure like Mintify and a few other companies in the fintech space. So eventually I ended up working with a lot of fintech companies, did a campaign for Yes Bank and worked with a few other known or unknown brands. And I also ended up building like a 30-20 person studio, with a partner, and then exited that, did a couple of startups. One was Local Dukaan, where I was mentored by the founder of Myntra, Vineet Saxena, and had a really good team. So we were able to convince some really smart people to come work with us. And right after COVID only, we raised a few $1,000s of funding, like $80,000, and built a very competitive product around the time Zepto and all these were coming up.
Interesting.
Eventually moved on, to different gigs. Currently I work as a design director at Betaflux, which is a consulting firm. So I run a design team, and I have helped fintech brands like Galgal, Moneybox, Cosmos Bank, and a few more non-fintech brands also. Tell like good products, build good products. And I'll end this with one thing, that I think storytelling is the future. So my last 2 years, I have dedicatedly focused on using animations to tell good stories, especially about products or things people can use, because I think good storytelling is lacking in there. Like, getting you excited to use something, or अगर तुम्हें कोई value मिल रही है life में किसी product से या किसी physical या digital, तो तुम use करोगे, उसमें कोई manipulation नहीं है, right? So how do you tell good stories? So that's where the storytelling animation part comes in.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where I stand.
Amazing, man. As in, it's fascinating कि हम लोग हमेशा मिलते रहते हैं. But when I'm listening to your stories in front of the camera, सब कुछ नया लग रहा है. So it's good learning for me also. Impressive. And I think we talked about curiosity, we talked about, being always active and doing those side projects. I think storytelling is also one of the very, very strong skill which is required as a designer.
Yes.
क्योंकि as a designer, पहले भी हम लोग बात कर रहे थे कि as a designer we have to solve problems and we have to propose something which is probably can't be seen in the physical world at that moment. जब हम लोग concept level पे कुछ propose कर रहे हैं, तब it's very difficult for a designer or anyone to convey that idea and gain the confidence of that person who is probably going to invest his hard-earned money into it. तो उस वक्त along with your sketches, I think verbal story helps a lot कि आप किस तरह से वो narrative present कर रहे हो, किस तरह से वो एक future vision put up कर रहे हो, articulate कर रहे हो. So I think that is also very important. Amazing. I think even though we have just talked about each other's journey, I think we have captured some of the very interesting, useful, pointers for the students. So if aspiring designers are listening to this, I'm pretty sure they'll be getting a lot of value already. Now, coming to the next part. So as I said earlier, इस पॉडकास्ट का मेन टॉपिक है डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन एंड वी आर गोना टारगेट aspiring डिज़ाइन स्टूडेंट्स इन दिस पॉडकास्ट. लेट्स जस्ट डाइव स्ट्रेट इनटू इट. मुझे ये बताओ, आई वांट टू अंडरस्टूड दिस फ्रॉम निशित बिकॉज यू हैव seen the Indian design landscape and also you have seen the landscape outside India, like when you were in art center or when you were in Bangkok. So tell me, in today's time, at this current moment in 2024, does this even count to take education abroad? Because it's very expensive. So do you feel, is it even worth to go out and take that expensive education, or you feel today Indian colleges have also reached a level where the design education is really good? What is your opinion on that?
So I think we have to boil this down to an individual perspective and understand the person that you're dealing with. So every designer that's out there, the question you ought to ask yourself is, why is it that you want to study abroad? I'm not even saying why do you want to study design. That is something that you guys are going to figure it out on your own. But what is it that drives you abroad? Like, what drove me abroad at that point was my thought processes, the way I went about things here in India was often considered way out there. It's not, it's abstract. किसी को कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है kind. So somewhere I felt alienated to the point I said, शायद से लोग बाहर होंगे who will be able to understand. And luckily I found a tribe like that.
Okay.
So I found people there at Art Center who were equally feeling the same thing. So that was the discovery factor that took place. In today's world right now, if you ask me, Indian design education is actually pretty good. Yes, we come with our own cultural experiences that is going to paint certain images and that's going to paint a certain experience for you, a certain adventure for you in the Indian design industry. Indian design industry today, while it's working on latent needs, I also see that it's working on aspirations as well. Like you designed the recent Pulsar, right? The NS 400, right? Yeah. So that has, the way the bike has been designed, anybody who looks at it, any designer like myself who looks at it knows that this has turned into an aspirational vehicle rather than a vehicle that's a need, like a commuter vehicle. It's a like commuter vehicle, but it's designed like an aspiration, right? The Indian design industry has now transitioned from being a latent problem-solving industry to now problem-solving and getting into aspirational and luxury design. We could say that, okay, abroad, there is more focus on luxury. There is more focus on an aspiration. That has been their focus for quite some time. But they have been running on the stream that has been running more or less like this. India is coming up. And now we are reaching and we are about to climb. We are about to surpass it as well. So I feel like the question that one has to ask themselves is, why is it that you want to go abroad? Being abroad is expensive. If you're looking only at design education is one thing, but the cost of staying, the cost of material, all the things you have to buy, the events you have to go to, all of that stacks up. वो हम लोग कोई देखते नहीं है. We say we'll handle it, but it's only when you get there you realize how difficult it is.
Okay, so just to summarize, I think what you're trying to say is India is there, and also Indian design industry has become mature. The audience here, I think, ये भी काफ़ी mature हो गई है. Now यहाँ के लोग समझते हैं कि डिज़ाइन की क्या वैल्यू है, and I think people
they're willing
today
to pay for it also.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
today I think Indians are ready to throw money if you provide them a good product. I
Yeah.
think मतलब मैं अभी रिसेंटली बहुत सरप्राइज हो जाता हूँ कि वैल्यू फॉर मनी जो एक कम्युनिटी थी ना इंडिया की, वो माइंडसेट काफ़ी चेंज हो गया है. लाइक पीपल आर वैल्यूइंग द क्वालिटी,
The margin of
experience, all those things. So I think, and if you are studying in India, it will be easier for you to grasp the Indian mentality. So, and as you rightly said, I think it's up to the individual कि अगर उससे अपना करियर इमेजिन करना है आउटसाइड इंडिया, then probably that is better. If somebody is imagining कि मुझे इंडिया के लोगों के लिए प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करनी है, because design is a problem solving at the end of the day. तो अगर इंडियंस के लिए प्रोडक्ट डिजाइन करने हैं तो आई थिंक इंडिया
there is
a better place.
another angle to it. So because students don't have a lot of world exposure, matlab today they have YouTube and everything,
Yeah.
so they know a lot of facts, but how to think is a very critical way. Solution आपका खुद का होगा, like you will come to a solution that works for you. But how to really frame this is कि imagine if you are from a small town and you always stayed in that small town, so you're always exposed to people of that language, of that region only, and you never come across, say if you grew up in say Tamil Nadu, you rarely come across people who speak say Marathi or French, right? But when you go abroad, one of the factors you should think about personal exposure is one good reason to go abroad could be I meet people from all over the world.
Yes.
I get into them in a healthy, competitive, but also long exposure environment. It broadens my mind, right? And does that make me a better designer, right? It comes at a cost, like Nishit said, that it comes at a heavy cost. You have to take up student loans, work on it.
But is it worth that cost is what you
is
ask.
it worth that cost is the question.
वो person to person subjective रहेगा.
And same thing, you should decide between India and abroad in these parameters ki where is it that I am getting the best knowledge of humanity possible. And I still feel in India some colleges have really evolved a lot, and colleges like NID have reputation and they have old school methods also a lot. But if you go abroad, they will give you a lot of hands-on things to try at cutting edge
Also
levels.
I think access to the legendary people, like for example अभी क्योंकि डिज़ाइन इंडस्ट्री इन इंडिया अभी भी इवॉल्व हो रही है, बट वहाँ पे लेट्स से इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट यूरोप और यूएसए, वहाँ पे पिछले 100 सालों से उनको डिज़ाइन पता है. तो वहाँ पे जो डिज़ाइन का अवेयरनेस है, जो मैच्योरिटी है, और उसकी वजह से जो सक्सेसफुल डिज़ाइनर्स हैं उनका एक्सेस इंडिया में रह के शायद ईजिली नहीं मिल पाएगा. तो आई थिंक व्हाट यू सेड, एक्सपोजर टू ब्रॉडन योर माइंड सेट, टू ब्रॉडन योर थिंकिंग, also getting access to really impactful people in your industry. I think ये 2-3 चीज़ें काफ़ी हेल्प करेगी. बट डेफिनेटली आई थिंक निश्चित पॉइंट इज़ वैलिड कि वो कॉस्ट जो है
is it worth it
तो वो आपके लिए, मतलब इट शुड बी योर ओन चॉइस कि अगर किसी के पास ऐसे ही बहुत सारा पैसा पड़ा है तो आई थिंक दे कैन चूज टू डू दैट, क्योंकि वो एक डेफिनेटली वहाँ का एजुकेशन एक स्टेप आगे का होगा. तो वो एक एक्सपोजर मिल जाएगा. दोज पीपल कैन ऑलवेज कम बैक टू इंडिया एंड गेट दैट पर्सपेक्टिव एक्सपीरियंस फ्रॉम इंडिया. तो वो भी हो सकता है. बट इट्स ब्यूटीफुल. आई थिंक देर इज़ नो येस और नो टू दिस आंसर. आई थिंक इट्स ऑल सब्जेक्टिव एंड इट वेरीज फ्रॉम पर्सन टू पर्सन कि आपके लिए क्या सूट कर रहा है, आपको क्या चीज़ें ज़्यादा वैल्यूएबल है. सो उसके हिसाब से आई थिंक यू कैन डिसाइड.
When people are having these conversations, ये जो एरिया है ना यहाँ पे, तो एकदम ऊपर सा कॉन्वर्सेशन हो जाता है. We never dive into the details because at the end of it, a person who's let's say watching us right now, who's looking for an answer is going to be like, भाई इसमें आंसर मुझे क्या मिला.
वो और कंफ्यूज हो गया.
हाँ, वो और कंफ्यूज हो गया, मैं करूँ कि नहीं करूँ.
इसका एक धंधा कैलकुलेशन है कि आज की डेट में ना बाहर धंधा कैलकुलेशन है.
It's not गंदा, okay? He said धंधा.
धंधा
Basically,
I love it.
धंधो माइंडसेट. हाँ, so धंधा कैलकुलेशन ये है कि 2 करोड़ रुपए का लोन लेना पड़ेगा तुमको बाहर पढ़ने के लिए, एंड उसके लिए फिर इंडिया में उतनी हाई सैलरीज की जॉब्स बहुत कम है. लेकिन आई कैन गिव यू वन एग्जांपल फ्रॉम माय इंडस्ट्री, लाइक सम ऑफ द मोस्ट हाईएस्ट पेइंग कंपनीज would prefer you if you studied abroad, if you at least had one degree from abroad.
But
ये भी एक पैरामीटर है. Right?
मतलब I'll agree to that, क्योंकि इंडिया में अभी भी थोड़ा सा जो
colonial mindset,
you can say colonial mindset, I don't know what to call it, but जो एक विदेशी डिग्री होती है ना, उसका एक वैल्यू है,
could be exposure also,
and it boils down to so many things कि मतलब आपकी जो growth है, because I have seen people who have taken education abroad, who have taken let's say 1 या 2 साल का ही experience at some really good studio outside India, तो वो जब इंडिया में आते हैं तो उनका salary structure will be different than the person who has always been in India. तो ये थोड़ा सा bias है, but again वो हर एक के aspiration पे भी depend करता है. अगर किसी को entrepreneur बनना है तो प्रोबेबली ये वाला पॉइंट वैलिड ही नहीं है. किसी को अगर ऐसा है कि इंडिया में रह के भी अभी लेट्स से स्टार्टअप वर्ल्ड में इफ़ यू गो, स्टार्टअप वर्ल्ड में पीपल हु आर विलिंग टू टेक रिस्क्स, सो वो अगेन 0 और 1 अप्रोच हो जाता है. लाइक लास्ट टाइम व्हेन आई वाज टॉकिंग टू नारायण सुब्रमण्यम, हु इज़ द को फाउंडर ऑफ अल्ट्रावायलेट, सो ही वाज सेइंग कि एजुकेशन अब्रॉड, पैसा एक डेफिनेटली फैक्टर है, बट एज अ डिज़ाइनर एक्सपोजर हेल्प्स यू अ लॉट. तो वो जितना एक्सपोजर मिलेगा, जितना भी आप अफोर्ड कर सकते हो, जितना भी आपको मिलता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन इंडिया ऑल्सो इफ़ यू गेट इन टू कॉलेजेस लाइक NID और एनी अदर प्राइवेट कॉलेज ऑल्सो, वहाँ पे ना एक्सचेंज प्रोग्राम एक ब्यूटीफुल कॉन्सेप्ट है. तो वहाँ पे क्या होता है, स्टूडेंट्स कैन देमसेल्फ अप्लाई टू different universities and ask them if they are willing to switch their student seat for 1 semester or something like that. तो यहाँ का एक स्टूडेंट वहाँ पे जाएगा, वहाँ का एक स्टूडेंट इधर आ जाएगा, and there is no additional cost. Definitely cost of living वो आपको bear करनी पड़ेगी, but in this also you can get a glimpse of what is happening outside. तो वो भी एक तरीका हो सकता है कि ठीक है आपके पास उतना ज़्यादा पैसा नहीं है, then you get into Indian Design College. यहाँ पे जाने के बाद you participate into n number of competitions, you apply for every possible exchange
maximize
programs,
your opportunity to
maximize your opportunity. हाँ, exactly. And then you get that exposure. अगर आप abroad जाना चाहते हो तो this can also be a one way.
Can I provide a hack? Students, right? एक simple hack है, because Nishit mentioned this point, right? कि no, like we should go deeper and nobody talks about these actionable things, right? एक चीज है जो कि तुम आज ही कर सकते हो, ठीक है? One simple hack. Open Excel या Google Sheets. Write down the names of 10 to 20 design people that you aspire to be. Like say Narayan could be one of them, Saket could be one of them. जो भी हैं, जो वो jobs कर रहे हैं या उन companies के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, LinkedIn पे ढूंढ लो, कहीं भी ढूंढ लो कि वो कहाँ काम कर रहे हैं, कौन से लोग हैं. Make a list of 20. If you are like really meticulous, make a list of 100. Then go write down which colleges they went to in the second column, and then write down how many years of experience and certain other things, right?
You're trying to map them out.
Map it out and percentage निकाल लो कि what is the trajectory that you're seeing successfully being catered to right now, and add a factor of new age things like social influence. कि designers who are really popular on social media can get a job faster. For example, if their work is very popular, companies are willing to give them. So add a factor of modern age factors and this, and just तुम्हारे पास एक Excel sheet prepare हो गई, which gives you a guaranteed idea of how the world is functioning.
You can actually add to it by using AI to help you.
ChatGPT.
I was like sitting and thinking like, ये मैं Gemini पे डाल के I'll say like मुझे ये चाहिए, because Gemini will help you understand, what will get you at least a little bit of insight on how those people think as well.
If somebody is in the space जहाँ पे वो college figure out कर रहे हैं, जो confused है, तो उसके लिए ये भी एक 4-way approach हो सकता है कि 4 attributes को आप figure out कर लो. First is finances. You figure out कितना आपका budget है. इसमें education loan का भी एक angle आ सकता है. You figure out कि कितना education loan आप ले सकते हो. Second is the alumni network. Okay. More than anything, I would say कि alumni network इतना अच्छा indicator है ना कि वो college अच्छा कर रहा है, बुरा कर रहा है. तो अभी इंडिया अब्रॉड डजेंट मैटर, बट अगर किसी कॉलेज से अच्छे अच्छे एलुमनाई बाहर निकल रहे हैं, वो अच्छी जगह पे जॉब कर रहे हैं, अच्छे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स बन रहे हैं, आई थिंक इट्स अ गुड वैलिडेशन कि वो कॉलेज कुछ तो अच्छा कर रहा है। बी इट एन इंडियन कॉलेज, कोई बाहर का कॉलेज होगा, कोई जस्ट स्टार्ट हुआ कॉलेज होगा, डजेंट मैटर। आई थिंक दैट इज अ वेरी पावरफुल इंडिकेटर। थर्ड थिंग इज कि आपको पढ़ाने कौन वाला है, योर मेंटर्स एंड टीचर्स। सो बेसिकली द बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम आई सी टुडेज डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन एटलीस्ट इन इंडिया कि टीचर्स जिनको जॉब नहीं मिल रहा है, they end up taking this job of being a teacher.
This is world over.
This is world over?
It's world over.
Okay.
It's not only here. I know we love to do India bashing, but in this case, honestly, it's world over.
So I think that is very unfortunate. I'm not saying कि सारे faculties ऐसे हैं.
Of course.
बहुत सारे faculties हैं who are classics. I think Abhishek and me, we had some of the best mentors from NID who helped us, and we are still in touch with them.
Yeah.
They are still helping us out. बट बहुत सारे ऐसे हैं कि जिनको जॉब नहीं मिल रहा है, इसलिए वो डिज़ाइन प्रोफेसर बन गए। सो आई थिंक इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू टू फिगर आउट कि आपके डिज़ाइन मेंटर्स कैसे हैं, कि मतलब उन्होंने कुछ जॉब किया है, कुछ रियल वर्ल्ड एक्सपीरियंस किया है, उनको कुछ क्रिटिकली कहीं पे वैलिडेशन मिला है,
have they done something valuable? Yeah.
So that can be the third important validator. The fourth could be the final one, that's syllabus. So अभी कैसा हो गया ना, बहुत सारे कोर्सेस बहुत कंफ्यूजिंग हो गए। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल हमारे टाइम पे एक ग्राफिक डिज़ाइन होता था या विजुअल कम्युनिकेशन होता था, दैट्स इट। उसमें आपको ग्राफिक डिज़ाइन पढ़ा रहे हैं, इंटरेक्शन डिज़ाइन पढ़ा रहे हैं, उसमें एक्सपीरियंस डिज़ाइन भी पढ़ा रहे हैं। अभी UI/UX डिज़ाइन बहुत फैंसी हो गया है, डिमांड बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो किसी भी चीज़ को वो लोग UI/UX डिज़ाइन बोल देते हैं एंड दे डोंट नो कि उसके अंदर पढ़ाने क्या वाला है। ठीक है, तो एटलीस्ट कुछ एक स्ट्रक्चर होता है कॉलेज के पास, तो उसमें आपको जो पढ़ना है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर किसी को UI/UX डिज़ाइनर बनना है और उन्होंने सिलेबस में बहुत ही एक जेनरिक एजुकेशन मॉड्यूल रखा है, तो देन देयर इज़ नो पॉइंट, राइट। मतलब उनको एक फंडामेंटल अंडरस्टैंडिंग मिल जाएगी कि क्या है UI/UX डिज़ाइन, बट हो सकता है कि वो बाद में जब पोर्टफोलियो बनाएंगे तो उनके प्रोजेक्ट्स में उतनी डेप्थ ही नहीं है, and it might not provide a very competitive sort of a portfolio जहाँ पे वो बाकी इंडस्ट्री, बाकी कॉलेजेस से जो आने वाले हैं उनके साथ compete करते हैं। सो आई थिंक ये 4 एट्रीब्यूट्स जो है, 4 वैलिडेटर्स जो है, इंडिकेटर्स जो है, इससे ना एक कॉलेज का रेपुटेशन क्विकली पता चल जाता है। सो आई थिंक दोज 4 थिंग्स आई कीप ऑन टेलिंग कि अगर कॉलेज में कंफ्यूज हो, जस्ट थिंक। फॉर एग्जाम्पल द फोर्थ वन, क्यू सिलेबस बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। उसमें ना आपके पर्सनल टेस्ट या पर्सनल इंक्लिनेशन भी मैटर, मतलब रोल प्ले करता है। फॉर एग्जांपल व्हेन वी वर गिविंग डिज़ाइन एग्जाम्स एंड ऑल, हमारे लिए सबसे बेस्ट 2 चॉइसेस थी कि IITs और NIT। सो आई वाज फॉर्चुनेट इनफ टू विजिट बोथ दीज कॉलेजेस। सो आई वेंट टू IIT बॉम्बे, आई वेंट टू NIT अहमदाबाद, NIT गांधीनगर, एंड मैंने रियलाइज किया बिकॉज I came from engineering background, I didn't want that very structured, organized, education when it comes to creative side of me. तो मेरा वो था कि मैंने इंजीनियरिंग किया है, I don't want to go into another engineering college. So that was my personal choice. It doesn't mean कि IIT गंदा है या NIT गंदा है. Both colleges are good at their own space.
But it made more sense for you to go pure design.
It just made more sense to me. राइट। अभी किसी के लिए ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि इंडिया का डिजाइन एजुकेशन जो है वो उनके लिए सूट ही नहीं करता, उनकी पर्सनल
हैपेंस, वो हो जाता है।
किसी को हो सकता है कि किसी एक पर्टिकुलर कंट्री का ज्योग्राफिकल जो है वहाँ पे लैंडस्केप या जो मेंटालिटी है, साइकोलॉजी की है, वो शायद बहुत अपील करती है, तो उसके लिए वो बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाता है। देन दे कैन थिंक ऑफ दोज कॉलेजेस। सो आई थिंक इसलिए पर्सनल inclination and that syllabus, that plays a very important role while selecting the college.
See, Saket, whatever you mentioned so far now, the 4 pillars, it's a fantastic approach, and it works well for people who are linear thinkers. For somebody like me, I'm an abstract thinker. As I'm talking about it, as I'm thinking of something, there are multiple different parts. Like my head is like a universe by itself, with all different things coming through. So the moment I hear like when I heard about the financing, the first thing it reminded me of when I first looked at the finance, and I was like, "Arey, मेरे पास पैसे हैं क्या इसके लिए?" So what happens is कि for someone like myself, when I hear the finance का bit ना, it shuts down everything else. इसके लिए पैसे ही नहीं है तो बाकी का क्यों ढूंढूं मैं? वो सब नहीं है. So your approach is correct. It's an approach that some of you could use, quite a few of you could use, who are linear thinkers, or basically who think on a B, C, D aspect, or a column-wise aspect, if I visualize it correctly. For some, the way I looked at colleges was what brings me that excitement that when I wake up, what's the first thing that comes into my head? Okay. This would drive my dad insane, because my dad is somebody who's a linear thinker. My mom is also a linear thinker. ये बंदा abstract कहाँ से आ गया? ये किसका बेटा है? It was like that, because I look at things differently, and that's how it informs my design. The first thing that I would look at is, the hardest question I had to answer was, why do I want to do it, and what is it that I want to do? I knew I wanted to design cars. Okay, who doesn't want to design a Lamborghini, or who doesn't want to design a Ferrari? But why do you want to do it? Do you want to do it to impress women? Do you want to do it to impress your family? Do you want to do it because you want to drive a Ferrari someday? What are those questions? Those are the hardest questions to answer.
That's true. Yeah.
So I would try to get those questions out, and believe me, it's not a fun situation. Huh? It's as bad as, like Robert Greene says, who's an author who did 48 Laws of Power. He says, writing is not fun. If you find writing fun, you're not doing it right. Okay, right. It's about setting an order or a structure to your thought process. The same is what I did with my design work. It was only when my furniture started to look like cars that I said, I think I'm getting back into cars, तो मुझे गाड़ियों में देखना है.
निश्चित के पॉइंट पे एक tangent ऐड करता हूँ. Hack number 2, okay? Because this is something even us adults do, and I learned it from multiple gurus, but one guy called Dan Ko, you can check him out on YouTube as well.
Yeah, my God.
But so this is a journaling hack that I've been.
Content, and I'll put that link.
Yeah, Dan Ko, please, the Dan Ko.
I've heard his name of the so long.
The hack is simple. The hack is simple because Nishit, you mentioned this point about structuring your thoughts. So the hack is एक डायरी खरीदो, जो भी तुम्हारा बजट है, 50 रुपए या 200 रुपए, एक डायरी खरीदो.
अरे पेपर ले लो.
हाँ, या पेपर ले लो. मतलब डायरी is helpful because you can always go back and reflect.
Fair.
But get something paper and not like digital. Digital journaling is also okay. हाँ. नहीं, I also do digital journaling on Notion. I can tell you about my operating system of life at one point in the conversation. But what I'm saying is, your brain, when lot of thoughts are just running around like free atoms, right? तो ऐसे घूम रहे फिर सेटल हो गए तो कचरा जमा हो जाता है, right? Because you're not always thinking about it, but you haven't resolved it. And there's a psychological thing where the brain does not like unclosed loops. इसलिए तुम irritable, तुम frustrated, तुम 10 चीजें हो जाते हो. So the point is, जो भी दुविधा या जो भी क्वेश्चन या जो भी प्रश्न चल रहा है दिमाग में, उसको कैसे आंसर करना है, इस एक डायरी रखो, हफ्ते का 1 दिन या 2 दिन डिपेंडिंग ऑन योर टाइमलाइन, कि 3 महीने है डिसाइड करने के लिए, तो रोज कर लो. अगर इफ यू हैव अ लॉन्गर टाइमलाइन, 1 day, 2 days a week, sit down, no distractions, maybe take a cup of chai or coffee, and have a list of topics that you want to expand on. So I have a diary, I can even show you guys later. So what I do is every Sunday I go to a third wave coffee, वहाँ पे मैं बैठता हूँ एक कॉफ़ी लेके, एंड मेरे ना एक बुलेट लिस्ट लिखी रहती है उस डायरी में, जिसके ऊपर मुझे एक्सपैंड करना है हर टॉपिक पे. ठीक है? एंड व्हेन आई डू दैट, राइट, it's a larger process called brain dumping. I started doing it digitally on Notion also, but then I realized I needed a better structure. So अब हफ्ते में 1 दिन होता है जब मैं ज़्यादा कंटेंट नहीं कंज्यूम करता हूँ, मैं डंप करता हूँ कंटेंट onto the paper या whatever, right? So in your case, कॉलेज जाना है, मेरी प्रायोरिटीज क्या है, क्या मेरे माँ बाप फाइनेंशियली सपोर्ट करेंगे, क्या मुझे कई साल तक 2 करोड़ का लोन पे करना पड़ेगा, मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ, राइट? मेक अ साउंड डिसीजन. यू हैव ऑल द parameters to make a decision, but pause, don't consume content. And hack number 2, I would say, is journaling, right? Just write it, a structured list, and then topics.
When I was in art center, we learned something called the KJ method.
Oh.
which was used for design. So I'll give it to you in a very crude format. I'm sure if my teacher who taught me this listen to me now, वो मुझे यहाँ पे ही fail
They'll be
कर देगा.
disappointed. Yeah. Nishit,
But I
get used to it now.
But no, but the thing now is that I've used it everywhere in my life on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So the brain dumping, as you call it, right? What I do is post-its ले लो, या अगर बड़ा सा white board है उस पे लिख दो, वरना normal paper पे भी चलेगा. Post-its लेके each post-it पे I write down anything that comes to my head. Ideas होंगे, feelings होंगे, it could be a certain thought that came to your head, it could be a task, it could be anything. Just blurt it all out and have all those post-its on there. Okay, but spend a limited amount of time, because you can go down this rabbit hole rather quickly. I would say, keep it to, in the start, when you start off, start with 10 minutes. Start with even 10 minutes. If you're somebody who's quite all over the place, ADHD hai, for example, then do 5 minutes, whatever may be this case. But put down all your thoughts in there, then step back from it, come back to it again, look at, take 10 minutes off, do something else, come back to it, and then jo post-its hai na, how your gut or your inner voice or your inner direction or compass decides to drive you, you start putting the post-its together, match karke to create certain bubbles. As you're doing this exercise na, you start realizing कि कहीं पे there are connections, पर मुझे समझ में आता है ये connection को कौन सा label दूँ, but I'm connecting it. And at some point they turn into little clusters of information right there, which makes you realize, oh, this makes me think of this, makes me feel like this, and makes me want to do X, Y, Z. So when you have these things, it brings up the insight list on what you need to look for, and you can apply it to anything from design projects. You can apply it to things you want to do, and you can also apply it to finding things you want to do. So like design colleges. Because design education or education in general is more than just the study. It is about the people you meet. It is about, like you mentioned, the connectivity you had. Like your need to get into NID or Art Center or IDC, the way I would go for it is I would go for the network for it. Because they have large networks, and NID helps NID. NID helps NID, and that's what I'm assuming. In Art Center we do. And that is your network. And then, as you mentioned, who you learn with. You can call this hack 5, but for people like me who are like all over the place, this is the way I can help structure my thoughts.
No, very interesting. I think this segment has become very powerful because there are some actionable steps students can take. One is definitely that mind mapping where we started. Second one could be those 4 pillar approach. The third one for non-linear thinkers, what you just said. So having those areas where you can do a little bit, focus more on the emotional aspect of your thinking. The fourth hack could be journaling, what you just said. And I think this is what you just said, like using post-its and all that.
Yeah.
So
KJ method.
KJ
method.
The original is called KJ method. But yeah, it's a derivation of it.
So I think
It's an NJ method. Yeah, or NK method.
NK method.
NK method, right. So
From the Kamath school of life.
Kamath school of life.
Oh God.
That's cool.
That could be a podcast that we can start. देख कितना रेड हो गया, लाल हो गया. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm breaking character. लाल हो गया निशित. I can see him turn red. Oh my God, निशित.
Please continue.
मुझे नहीं पता था इतना लाल हो सकता है.
कितना स्वीट है यार ये. Nice.
Alright.
Amazing, but interesting, very powerful segment of this podcast. I think जो भी aspiring student confused है कि कॉलेज कैसे लेना चाहिए, कौन सी डिसिप्लिन, so many confusions he can have. I think ये 4-5 डायरेक्शन में वो सोच सकता है. There are some really good actionable steps which we mentioned just now. Amazing. Let me ask you this very interesting question, and I want to ask this to Abhishek. Okay, so we went to NID together, and like whatever, like I know what we experienced there, the kind of education we had and everything. Now, after NID, you chose a very unorthodox path for yourself. You went into your own entrepreneurial journey of yours, and today, like after, let's say, we went into NID in 2011. Now, after 13 years, when you look back, what do you feel that education which was provided in NIT, was that enough? And if you feel if that was not enough, what were those 2-3 things which you want to add to that syllabus of NIT in today's time?
Okay. So I recently answered this question for a student somebody who studies at NIT. Many people are very curious, right, how to balance this. So your college time, masters or undergrad, whatever, it's a very pure time when you are not a part of the regular working society and you are in your own world, and other than the curriculum, you are also exploring social, बहुत सारी चीजें, but it's a very pure time to go crazy. Like 15 hours a day, you can practice something you're obsessed about, if you really are, right? And you gotta find उस टाइम पे ना, मान लो तुम whatever you're studying transportation design or graphic design, but तुम्हारे curiosities होंगे, and you gotta like a painter would paint around his curiosities or her curiosities. Similarly, you gotta learn to paint your curiosities in different paintings during your education ka time, right? So one thing is that, so treat that time, don't treat that time as oh, I'm just a student, I don't have money, waste away your life doing bullshit. Like, do the social things, do fun stuff, have a lot of fun, but really use that time as for what it is. Listen from us, right? कि जब जॉब कर रहे हो, ये कर रहे हो, तुम्हारी लाइफ का टाइम श्रिंक हो जाता है of doing these things. So use that time, paint your canvas, become a master of it. So a graphic designer should become a very deep, observant master of what they are studying, right? A transportation designer should go deep into the different aspects of the curriculum. And जब वो हो रहा है, उसको purely enjoy it for the essence of it. That's one part. The second part is now your college also becomes your larger network. Like some of these people will end up going into the best companies in the world. Some of these people will end up starting big businesses. Many of these things will happen. So networking would be a second thing. That always make good connections, possibly genuine connections, and so that even if you meet them a decade later in your life, you are able to always use that network. And I am also kind of relegating it from some people I know in my life. Like right now I'm surrounded by people from some of the top business schools in the world. I've worked with them closely, or some of my closest friends are there. Some of my friends are from the IIT Bombay network and other places. What I have seen, what they've done successfully, even the NID people that I know, that are like really on top of their game, two things they do. It's not that they are the best at what they do always, but उनका skill हमेशा best नहीं होता. But they are consistent. They are always delivering. They build a reputation, and they have a network that can vouch for them. Like imagine 100 people being able to say, "I loved working with this guy," right? So building that network, not burning bridges, not making juvenile mistakes. Try to make less of those mistakes, right? बस थोड़ा थोड़ा करके आगे बढ़ो, enjoy करो, and obviously if you're good at your skill.
I would like to just clarify on the mistake ka part. Because see, often at times as you're studying through, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to make a whole lot of them. Those are not the mistakes he's talking about. Okay. What he's talking about are avoidable mistakes.
Relationship mistakes.
Like, when you know that something's wrong, stand up to it or step away from it. Otherwise, or deal with the consequences. Learn to deal with the consequences.
Learn how to talk carefully.
Even if you don't talk carefully, learn to stand up and accept the way that you're talking may have offended somebody or picked some.
It's not wrong to offend someone. I'm saying learn how to talk in a way where your words have value. Whether you're believing in a cause, whether you're pushing an agenda, because life is all about influence, right? In a good way, not in a negative way. So learn how to be very mindful of what you say.
I think story telling भी कहीं ना
कहीं storytelling.
क्योंकि वो जब मतलब I know because when I joined NID तो पहली बार मैं जूरी दे रहा था. So I remember struggling like anything. वो जूरी में मतलब 15 मिनट के लिए खड़े होके इतने एक्सपीरियंस लोगों के सामने अपना काम एक्सप्लेन करना. I had never done it before. So तब मुझे रियलाइज हुआ कि मैं कुछ भी बात कर रहा हूँ. मतलब आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट माई वर्क ओनली, बट देर इज नो फ्लो, देर इज नो स्टोरी, देर इज नो बैकग्राउंड, देर इज नो कंक्लूजन. एंड आई थिंक वो उस चक्कर में क्या होता है कि वो ऑडियंस आपका और कंफ्यूज हो जाता है. तो take it even like a zoomed out point of view onto this is what you are trying to say कि वो एक storytelling articulation बहुत important बन जाता है. That's what I think you were trying to say. And sometimes that articulation, if not done properly, it's open for misunderstandings and misinterpretations, right?
It's known scientific data. Adam Grant from Wharton also says this, that the really successful people are the ones who are competent as well as they can communicate well. So to summarize the point, what I was saying is you should learn how to communicate smartly and be competent at what you do, whatever it is.
A third thing I would add to that is to read the room or the person in front of you.
Smart.
Read the room and the person in front of you. Because you can be competent, you can be communicator, but अगर सामने वाला सुन रहा नहीं है तो कोई फायदा भी नहीं है. Okay, and you guys may be wondering as what has this got to do with is design education in India or abroad. The reason why is that all these are small little key milestones or keystones that build your entire cluster of information. At the end of it, all these might seem like ये syllabus के बाहर है, but this is what makes the syllabus reach out to people who you are trying to problem solve for.
हम कॉलेज में सोचते हैं कि सिर्फ स्किल पे ही अच्छा होना सब कुछ है, but that is a mistake. Skill is crucial, but you gotta operate it like a wholesome experience.
एक holistic approach होना चाहिए.
Yeah.
Recently, I was also discussing the same topic with Sudhir Sharma, who is also going to be on the podcast. So he was also we were discussing this same topic, that there's too much focus on skills, which is a good thing, and he also felt that skills are very important. However, जो practical skills है ना, जो शायद उसको define नहीं कर सकते, जैसे story telling बोल दिया. Now we are trying to define them. जैसे story telling हो गया, जैसे dealing with people हो गया, PR skills हो गया. कल को जाके आप जॉब करो या फ्रीलांस करो,
रेप्यूटेशन बनानी चाहिए,
क्लाइंट्स, उनके साथ एक लॉन्ग टर्म रिलेशन कैसे बनाना है, उनके साथ क्या कम्युनिकेट करना है, रीडिंग द रूम. आई रिमेंबर वन इंसिडेंट जहाँ पे वन ऑफ माई कलीग्स वाज प्रेजेंटिंग टू अ जापानीज बॉस, और वो जापानीज बॉस सो गया. ठीक है. अभी वो सो गया है, उसके साथ में जो भी बैठे हैं दे आर नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट पीपल, मतलब वो उसी को प्रेजेंटेशन था, तो वो सो गए तो अभी कोई पॉइंट ही नहीं है ना. तो आई थिंक उसको जगाना बहुत जरूरी था. तो ही शुड हैव डन समथिंग टू वेक हिम अप समहाउ.
But he continued the presentation.
Wow. और बाद में he didn't have any question, he didn't कुछ सुना ही नहीं उसने. So I think this has become like a literal reading the room, but I think कई बार वो लोग सोते नहीं है, but from their reactions and from their facial expression also you can make out कि वो,
and you can improvise. If you are seeing the room fall apart, you can improvise.
कई बार जो स्टोरी हम लोगों को लगती है कि बहुत इम्पैक्टफुल है, बट वो शायद हमारी जूरी, क्लाइंट या जो भी आपका बॉस है अलग से, उसको वो सुनना नहीं है. तो आई थिंक that can be the moment when you have to read the room and then pivot. So I think these 3-4 things are also important. So I think just to summarize what you said is NID provided a really good environment. It provided a good set of resources, the ambience, everything, where you can learn and nurture your own skills required for a designer. At the same time, जो life skills है, what we talked about, storytelling, communication, reading the room, उसके बाद में PR skills, ये सारी चीज़ें वहाँ पे कोई सिखा नहीं रहा है, but I think that can be included in some way or other, so that you'll be better prepared for your life, for your next professional journey. Amazing. So now that we talked about this thing, Nishit, I want to ask you this: that you have seen what happens outside India, what happens here, and I'm pretty sure you must be dealing with a lot of young talent. You must be interacting. I must say this is the question for both of you. You can answer one by one. If we talk about the current generation of students or current generation of fresh graduates who are, starting to work and all as a designer, which are the positive and negative things which you observe? Because we have spent at least a decade in this industry, we have your own observations. But if you have to put down 2-3, not more than that, but 2-3 positives and negative things for this current generation of design students or young designers, what would that be? Nishit, you can start first.
You want to apply the sandwich method?
Good,
Start good,
bad,
bad,
good.
You can. Anything is okay.
Okay, so the good things I'll tell you about these students are they are well versed with, or they are aware at least, and are able to use multiple different softwares that are real time, like are required in real time. You know, there are people who are playing with AI, there are people who are playing with 3D softwares, all different kinds, from Fusion to you name it, to even like Blender, for example, which is great. You're aware of that. So I like the fact that they are aware of this. Second part is that they are quite internet savvy. We weren't as internet savvy. That's why today we still struggle to a certain degree, because a lot of information shooting at us, but the newer generation is immune to it. They have a lot of information there. Now with that comes the sandwich. We ho gaya bread, abhi aa gaya patty. Now the thing here is there's a lot of entitlement that has come in, and that entitlement has come in from a place of frustration. It has come in from a place of bombardment. And what I mean by this is that there's this notion that मुझे ऐसा वाला जॉब चाहिए, मैं यहाँ से आया हूँ, मुझे ऐसा वाला ही जॉब चाहिए. And it is more so now than it was when I'm talking about dial back a decade ago. It's more so now than then. And मुझे ये वाला जॉब नहीं मिलेगा ना, तो मैं काम नहीं करूँगा जब तक मुझे. What they fail to realize at that point is the amount of time you're sitting there doing nothing is etching away at the education that you have put so much work into. Like to give you an analogy, there are a couple of designers I know now. They have gone abroad to study, but there were a couple of designers who has to be like, I understand कि you're looking for X work, but यहाँ पे ये वाला काम है for designing, let's say, motorcycles. नहीं, मुझे मोटरसाइकिल डिज़ाइन करना नहीं आता तो मैं नहीं करूँगा. ऐसे डिज़ाइन प्रिंसिपल्स तो सेम है. यू आर एन ऑटोमोटिव डिज़ाइनर, यू कैन अप्लाई योर पर्सपेक्टिव टू इट. नहीं, पर मुझे गाड़ियाँ ही डिज़ाइन करना है, तो आई विल फोकस. रिजिडिटी हैज़ सेट इन, एंड दिस इज डेंजरस नाउ. इफ यू हैव रिजिडिटी नाउ, यू आर गोइंग टू ब्रेक इन द नियर फ्यूचर. And that is something that you have to let go. You have to be willing to be agile, you have to be willing to be flexible, and you have to accept that you're not going to start off at a place where you thought you're going to start off. That is something that kept me in good step. That's something that kept all of us in good step. We all knew that we all have started from the bottom and climbed various bottoms, but we've started from there, which today is not there in that field. And I think also another thing that the new designers or the new generation is facing is a lack of focus. And you can't blame them in a certain way, because they're surrounded by a very vivid world that is constantly throwing various forms of, it's overstimulated. They have nowhere to go. So if you sit with somebody and you ask them क्या करना है, they look at you blank like, मैं तो कुछ भी कर सकता हूँ. तो अगर कुछ भी कर सकते हो तो ऐसा खाली क्यों बैठे हो? हाँ, I don't know where to begin.
That is true, man. This is so, relatable, क्योंकि मैंने recent times में ना ऐसे बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स देखे जिनको सब कुछ आता है, बट सब में ना सरफेस लेवल का ही नॉलेज है. आई थिंक दैट्स व्हाई पीपल फ्रॉम आवर जनरेशन, या हमारे भी पेरेंटल जनरेशन हो, आई थिंक दे वर वेरी क्लियर कि हमें, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल माय पेरेंट्स, उनका क्लियर था कि उनको सर्वाइवल इम्पोर्टेंट है, तो जहाँ पे ज़्यादा पैसा मिलेगा वो मैं करने वाला. अब उन्होंने कभी ये सोचा ही नहीं कि मेरा पैशन क्या है, ये क्या है, वो क्या है. सो दे लेड अ वेरी कंफर्टेबल पीसफुल लाइफ, क्योंकि उनका फोकस क्लियर था, मुझे अपने फैमिली को अच्छा लाइफस्टाइल देना है. कमिंग बैक टू आवर टाइम, तो वहाँ पे हम लोगों के पास ऐसा था कि हम लोग थोड़ा सा सर्वाइवल के ऊपर उठ गए थे. नाउ वी वर क्लियर कि सर्वाइवल तो हर जगह पे मिल रहा है.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Survival, self-actualization.
कौन सा जॉब ज़्यादा खुश करेगा, which will be more enjoyable and exciting for us, तो हमने वैसा सोच लिया. आज की डेट में ऐसा हो गया ना कि सब कुछ ही एक्साइटिंग है. तो स्टूडेंट्स और सोशल मीडिया की वजह से ना, आई थिंक स्टूडेंट्स डोंट हैव दैट टाइम, और दैट दे डोंट फील दैट नीड ऑफ सिटिंग विद देमसेल्व्स और थिंक अबाउट कि मुझे क्या चाहिए, मेरा क्या पर्सनैलिटी है. बहुत ज़्यादा जो बम्बार्डिंग हो रही है उसकी वजह से उनका पेशेंस लूज हो गया है. ADHD जो बोल रहे हो वो उसी वजह से प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. आई थिंक तो फोकस थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम है. मे बी इट इज़ गुड इन सम वे, मे बी इट इज़ bad in some way.
And to add to one more thing, FOMO.
FOMO, oh yeah.
FOMO, the fear of missing out is so high that the person is not able to focus on what they want to do and is not able to give time to other things that they find attractive because somebody has done it. And it took me also a while to dial back to get away from Instagram. Why I talk about Instagram is Instagram pulls you into this world where people talk about, like, even a coffee cup, they will talk about it like it's the best bloody coffee cup that's out there. Hey, coffee cup, ceramic ka to bana hai. Yes, किसी artist ने लगाया होगा to make it, but at the end of it, it is a coffee cup. But the way they make it sound is, even if a person is sitting and let's say designing cameras, they'll be like, मुझे भी अभी coffee cup का बनाना है. So instead of being able to focus on your passion and your desire, you're focusing on how to be relevant. And the one way you can be relevant is to get rid of this FOMO.
So in the design industry, particularly, I have managed over 40 people, hired or managed or even nurtured, grown. Okay? So some of the patterns I've seen is, and most of them have been Gen Zs, you know. So, and I have initially I had struggle managing such teams or their expectations, because I didn't know how to align my value systems, the way I saw things, with how they see, the way they see things. But currently, most of my team is Gen Z, and they are very driven, very dedicated, very proactive. Like, sare values jo chahiye as an employer to me, they are able to give that, right? And even sometimes I ponder ki what were the things that led to that. Because initially it wasn't like that. They were very chaotic. They had all these the typical traits that people are finding misaligned. So I realized that setting right expectations, like the first time person in my team, and he's like a really fun person, but he said something mean about one of the engineers at my company. And I said, no, we'll not disrespect our colleagues. They are your colleagues. We'll never say anything mean. Although it was just a joke, right? But setting that boundary in just the first month of them joining, they started knowing, okay, having fun is a different thing, insulting somebody is a different thing, right? So that's a boundary, right? And what boundaries do is, they tell you people that you're not a dangerous person, that you'll one day just snap at them or give them, right? Once you set the right environment. So whatever you're doing, I mean, I'm talking from a perspective of the job success or thriving in a job. So students, whoever of you are listening, this could be actually a competitive edge for you, right? So imagine if you have mastered a little bit of focus, the art of focus, right? And there's a book called Indistractable. There are some good books on it, deep work, right? Study them and consume your culture, consume media, whatever you want, but practice a little bit so that you have a little bit of focus. We are millennials. Our generation didn't have so much distractions because we got bored often. We had to sit with a book or with certain things. So we were used to getting bored, right? Actually, today boredom is a value. So you got to become comfortable getting bored, right? And that leads to great things. So number one thing is master the art of focus. Number two is also embrace boredom. Boredom is not bad. Boredom could actually be like, जब बैठते हैं ना, like Newton के ऊपर apple गिरा था, so then because he was bored, he had these ideas, right? There's a lot of angles to it. Another thing I've seen is expect a structure. If you don't see a structure, if you don't see clarity in any environment you're in, whether it's an academic environment or a job environment, ask your seniors to provide you that structure and clarity, because Gen Z operates on that, right? And last couple of points on this are that I have also seen this thing like being a little impatient with, say, like very soon, I haven't yet contributed much to you, but I'm expecting you to give me more monetary value and all this very soon without giving you the value. So whenever you are in an equation, try to see what value you are really generating. Entitlement ki baat nahi hai, because none of the generations,
the word was entitlement.
Yeah. No, I'm saying ki you shouldn't feel entitled. The thing is, the world is a very, what you give is what you get kind of a mechanism. The more value you create, the more the world returns the value to you. Yeah. You can even see that in the world today. I don't have to explain it. So what I'm saying is, instead of feeling like I am entitled to get a raise every 3 months, 6 months, think of it like, how can I give these guys so much value that they just, the obvious choice for them is to give me that raise. right? So these are the 3-4 points. If I'm missing anything,
No.
yeah, consistently deliver value. फिर वो employer appreciate नहीं भी कर रहा है, you'll find the right person, right head, right? It goes and builds you a very healthy life. So I'll just lastly summarize. What was that? Distractibility को कैसे control करना है? Basically focus. Making boredom your friend. Actually finding at least 1 to 2 hours every week to get bored. Third was not feeling entitled. And the last one is offering value as much as you can.
That's it.
Yeah, consistently.
I want to add to this, or actually work with this. See, what was the first thing you said? Distractions.
Yeah.
Okay. When you are really truly interested in doing something, okay, you will focus on it. Now, I was a kid who grew up with ADD, and my teachers would go wild trying to understand what is this guy doing. But somewhere along the way, when I discovered design and I got into design, you couldn't pull me away from it. Till that time, अगर मैं पढ़ाई मैथ्स कर रहा हूँ या साइंस कर रहा हूँ, जो भी है लिख रहा हूँ, तो आ गई बिल्ली सामने या something that suddenly I'm running around. But with design, you couldn't pull me away. So be open to the fact that sometimes you might find passion or interest in something that will capture it completely that you may not. That's when you know that you're focused on that. So keep your options open. Secondly, boredom. I don't know what boredom is, because as a person growing up, I have to keep myself occupied with different things. घर पे अगर कुछ भी नहीं है, 2 पत्थर भी है ना, तो पत्थर को रख के scraping, I'd sit and do something.
Curiosity is the cure for that.
Yeah. So there are some of us who are like that, who are always up to something. But this boredom point that he mentioned is great, because there are quite a few people who are like, I'm bored, entertain me.
That's not the right place.
It's not the right place. You're bored. Okay, sit and figure out what are the different things that would make you feel bored. Focus on the boredom. Just focus on it and say like, okay, मैं boredom के साथ अभी मैं क्या करूँ?
There's a word called सस्ता dopamine. ठीक है? So because you mentioned this boredom वाला point now, सस्ता dopamine है कि you're now I'm bored, what to do? And सस्ता dopamine could be like something as cheap as Instagram scrolling. Or random content consumption, pornography, all these things are sasta dopamine. But the good dopamine is actually making an effort to read a book, doing an exercise, a workout, right? Talking to a person, having a valuable conversation. Those are harder to get dopamine, but they last longer.
See, there is a statement by, I think, Eric Thomas, who says, if you do what is easy, your life will be hard.
Yeah.
And the sasta dopamine. Instagram scrolling, pornography, and what is the other one? Whatever, random content consumption. This is sasta now. It heavily of costs later. Cost is super heavy afterwards. And this also applies towards even the colleges you're applying to, etc. I wanted to, and what is the last point after boredom which you had?
After boredom, I had don't be entitled.
Entitled.
And provide value.
Yeah.
Consistent value. I think just to simplify this segment, I think
You mean it's not simplified already?
No, because we have drifted in so many directions. No?
Of course.
So just to summarize, so that there is a concrete conclusion to this segment, I feel today's generation is blessed with a lot of knowledge and lot of content,
lot of access,
so this becomes a blessing, at the same time a big challenge, because they have to figure out what to consume. They have to be very conscious about it, so that's where the focus comes into picture. So if you are focused, you will consume a particular content which will help you stay focused and become a better person who can deliver consistent value over the time. And I think what you said, that entitlement and boredom, like both of these things, I think it boils down to being focused on your own journey more than anything else. Like for example, if you know clearly कि मुझे automobile designer बनना है, तो I think आप किसी भी चीज़ को लेके आपका फोकस यही होगा कि मुझे ऑटोमोबाइल डिज़ाइनर बनना है, अच्छा डिज़ाइनर बनना है. So I will focus on learning this craft. I'll focus on growing my network in automobile design. I'll focus on understanding more and more opportunities. तो आपका ना वो पूरा जोन ऐसा narrow down हो जाएगा, funnel down हो जाएगा, so that you'll be focused. So I think again and again we are coming down to that point where there are so many distractions today, but people who are focused are the ones who are gonna make something really beautiful and impactful for themselves.
Now that we talked about so many things about design education, अभी भी मुझे लगता है कि इंडियन मेंटालिटी ना बहुत ज़्यादा कॉस्ट सेंसिटिव है.
Of course.
क्योंकि हम लोग अभी भी उस पॉइंट पे नहीं पहुँचे कि जहाँ पे वी डोंट वरी टू मच अबाउट मनी. डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन इज़ वेरी एक्सपेंसिव एंड दैट्स वाई मेनी पेरेंट्स देयर फर्स्ट कंसर्न इज़ कि उस पर अच्छा रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगा कि नहीं. मतलब आफ्टर स्पेंडिंग लेट्स से 20 lakhs ऑन डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन 4 साल, will my kid get a job or not is their first concern. So what do you want to tell them? What is your opinion about all this?
So that question gets asked quite often. I'm sure Abhishek, you faced it as well.
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer because, like I said, right place, right time. Sometimes the need of the industries, you have to be able to pay attention to all of that. And despite paying attention to all of that, there may be a scenario कि शायद से थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा जॉब मिलने के लिए. बट जो रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट है वो इट इज़ अ मिक्स ऑफ टैंजिबल एंड इनटैंजिबल रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट. The return on investment that I would perceive from a design education, let's start with intangible first. It's the easiest to talk about. Then look at tangible. Intangible matlab which are the periphery, which is more from a growth and development standpoint. Tangible is what I say versus being able to sustain yourself. That's how I'm going to divide it. So for the lack of a better word, I'm using intangibility and tangibility. Intangible mein with a design education, you get it's a design community even today is a very small niche community versus the rest of the world with the other streams. Okay, so you end up being a part of a close community. If you're from NID, if you're from Art Center, I've mentioned this before as well. You are a part of a tightly knit community that ends up helping each other out. If you're in your university, be it NID, IDC or Art Center, you're like, I'm looking for a job for XYZ, there will be somebody who will be able to talk for you or introduce you, open the door. Uske baad jo karna hai, that is completely up to you. What you do and how you do it, but mostly it is that network that you get it. The second return on investment you get is you get an overall ability to look at your life from a holistic standpoint rather than looking at your life from a survival driven standpoint. You look at what is the meaning you want to drive into your life. That is what I learned from my design education. That what is the meaning I want to drive into my life? What is the meaning I want to instill in other people's lives or at least share with other people's lives? Now coming down to the tangibility of it. Design jobs are right now there are more, but the number of designers are also more. It's the same thing as 10 years ago. 10 years ago, designers were lesser, but the number of jobs were also lesser. Now the number of jobs are more. So there are two ways to go to it. If you want a return on investment on your job, is either, like you mentioned, you develop yourself to fit into a certain stream or a certain line, or you brand yourself to be somebody where people want to come and want to create new things. And there are many others, but I'm just focusing on these two. Either you look at the jobs out there and say, okay, UX UI, you have mentioned UX UI के काफ़ी jobs है आज. अगर LinkedIn पे खोल के देखो तो UX UI करके even product design now today लिखा है ऊपर से product design, नीचे पे देखो तो UX UI. तो when you read all of that, you decide, okay, मुझे ये वाले skills चाहिए, ये वाले skills चाहिए. But if you want to amplify or get better return on investment on your design scope, is to decide between you want to be a person with your own brand, or you want to be a person to sculpt yourself to fit into certain requirements. That will help in easing your basically easing your opportunities to be able to get a job. That is what I'm sensing. This is not a promise that you will get a job. In fact, even if you step back and look at other fields, medicine, okay, I can't talk about medicine. Because it's a requirement. It's a requirement at all times. We need doctors. Engineers, dekh lo. There are a lot of people going into engineering colleges as well. But it's not necessary कि engineering से बाहर निकल के तुम लोग सबको job मिला है. नहीं. But the engineers have gone and taken up marketing. They have gone and taken up sales. they're doing all of that. You have to be flexible enough to be like, अगर design में नहीं मिला तो what is the next best thing that you can work on? This is how I would look at return on investment.
I want to add this, but first I want to hear from Abhishek. I have something very interesting to tell, but let's...
I think मैंने because of interacted with many kinds of designers, so ROI financial चीज़ है, right? Like what's the number? So if you go to a design school like NID is a government school, IIT Bombay is government schools. So your cost of investment will be pretty low, maybe under 10 lakhs or less, right? There's also the cheapest way. Spend 10,000 rupees and do an online crash course and start applying for design jobs. Even many people are entering the design industry like that. Now every decision that, and the third option is spend 1 crore to 2 crore, go abroad, study and get that abroad का degree, right? 3 options, right? तो 5,000 से चालू होके 2 crore तक के options हैं of investing. Now what is the ROI of them? So if you took like a crash course and 90% or 95% of people who just took like a short course and went into the design industry might hit a ceiling within 5 years or 10 years of their career of growth. Right, and their packages might be limited to say
That's very true.
15 to 20 lakhs के ऊपर वो कभी grow शायद ना कर पाए, because they'll never be, you're only taken as seriously as the investment of, you know, training that you have put, and it becomes more serious as you go further in your career. The number 2 kind of people who get a little lucky, and I think Saket and I got lucky in there because we went to a government college, so we didn't pay much. That's a very small number of people, but if you get lucky like that, you maximize your opportunities, do different things. You can keep growing because the reputation, the training, and the cost work in your favor. But that's a small percentage of people. Hopefully it grows. The third percentage is कि यार you either invest in a private design school or go abroad. The number ranges from 20 lakhs to 2 crores again, right? So for such people now opportunities are different depending on how serious your degree was or how good you are personally. It keeps growing, right? So such people can again be considered for senior roles and keep growing throughout their career consistently. So my point is, अगर तुमने आज shortcut लिया, तो अभी तुम्हें job मिल जाएगी, but it might be hard for you to not cross the ceiling, right? अगर तुमने आज investment किया, तो तुम consistent growth पे देख सकते हो in the long term. And I know designers who earn say 5 lakh annually, 15 lakh, 30-40 lakh and all the way up to say 80-90 lakh, and the biggest difference that there is, more than anything, even your degree, is how well presented you are and how well communicated you are wherever people can find you, right?
So it comes down to brand. It comes to branding at the end of it.
Comes to you, how
you as
you
a
bring
person.
yourself.
What we mean by branding is who are you as a person. Yeah. I resonate with what you said right now, every single bit of it. Now I come from the place where I spent about 1 crore plus to get into that space, and it allowed me to enter the network of Art Center. Like today also, if I go to a university, I paid for the network. If I dial it down, it paid for the network and the ability to interact with the legendary designers, as you called it as well. Because the moment you go to any company here, and if suppose somebody is like, who are you or where have you come from? If I say I'm Nishit Kamath, I'm an Art Center alumni, हाँ आ जाओ. That doesn't mean कि मुझे job मिलने वाला है, but it helps me enter a place and
it opens the door for you. उसके आगे आपको खुद ही करना है.
You're at least getting an appointment with that person.
Yeah. So those degrees are like, they are like opportunities for you to open a door. जैसे कि मंदिर में there are people standing in lines and there's a VIP line. This is like a VIP line. That is how you look at it at the end of it. I hope the colleges don't kill us for this, but it is down to that. That's even the power that NID has, from what I've seen. Because the moment when somebody says I'm from NID, the person's eyes light up. ये बंदा कुछ तो change करेगा. Is the thing. कुछ तो लाएगा, कुछ design value लाएगा. So that is the value of a degree, is what I said. But let's say now you have a tough time, like you're spending on certificate courses, like you said. Yes, your trajectory is going to be harder. If you take that certificate course and expect to ride out long on that certificate course, it's not going to happen. But if you're taking a certificate course and you're amplifying the usage of it, you're talking about how you've been able to amplify it. You build it up. You could be a person tomorrow with no degree, but you could be getting all the killer jobs left, right, and center.
Exactly.
And there may be a person next to you with all the degrees, and they may have none. So at the end of it, it boils down to you. A degree is just like a pass and an entry. It is a network. It keeps you in your network, and it basically talks about the things that you have learned.
So I want to add to all these pointers what you said. I agree to all of them. See, design education महंगा है. I think इसको अभी कुछ कर नहीं सकते. And once you have decided कि अभी design ही करना है, like you have found your passion, inclination, love for design, and now there is nothing you can do because you don't want to become an engineer, you want to become a designer. अभी एक सिनेरियो कंसिडर करते हैं जहाँ पे स्टूडेंट बहुत क्लियर है. फर्स्ट ऑप्शन इज दैट यू चूज अ कॉलेज which has very minimal sort of fee structure. So for example, IITs, I know their fees are very less. On top of it, they offer TARA, so teacher assistant or research assistant. So in that scenario, you end up earning as a student. Okay. So again, going to IIT is not easy.
You were also a research assistant at NID, right?
NID, yeah. Later I became research assistant. So so in NID also, that can be that can happen. The fees are not as less as IIT, but definitely there are ways. Also, there are multiple provisions for students where you can apply for scholarships. So if you are like really from a economically challenged background, then you can apply for scholarships like Ford scholarship, Tata scholarship. I don't remember the names now. But once you get into all these colleges, you should inquire about all these things. And there's a possibility that somehow your fees will get compensated by these scholarships. That can be one thing. Another thing, what could be, is I think today we live in such a wonderful time where we have multiple opportunities to generate revenue. I'll tell you that. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल पहले 15-20 साल पहले ऐसा था कि स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड पाथ एक डिज़ाइनर के लिए यही था कि डिज़ाइन की डिग्री फिनिश करो, या तो स्टूडियो स्टार्ट करो खुद का, या तो कहीं पे जॉब ज्वाइन करो, राइट? यही दो ऑप्शंस थे. इन टुडेज टाइम आई हैव सीन पीपल हु आर इन डिज़ाइन कॉलेज, इवन नाउ दे आर डिज़ाइन स्टूडेंट्स, दे हैव स्टार्टेड building their own personal brands by simply sharing their work and stories and things like that. Through that, they are able to capture really, huge opportunities and huge gigs, you can say, like projects and things like that. People like them who are still in college as a design student, they are working with companies like Meta, Adobe, these companies are there to experiment and give chances to all these young talents. On top of it, some of them have become design influencers by themselves. There's one girl, she's I think in her 3rd year of animation design. वो simply ना अपनी paintings या जो भी animation के जो sketches वगैरह है उसके videos बनाती है, वो डालती है. Recently, one of her videos, reels, got viral. And what's happening to her is she's selling all these things, all those sketches of her through the audience, because those people are getting curious. They like her style, they like the story as an artist behind her, so they are ready to pay that premium amount for her paintings, क्योंकि कल को जाके इनको भी प्राउडफुली बोलना है कि भाई ये लड़की है जिसके 100K फॉलोअर्स है इंस्टाग्राम पे, शी इज़ वेरी पॉपुलर, उसका ये पेंटिंग है. So that's how people are generating revenue. So that is one way. Another thing is, when you are in design college itself, there are multiple avenues like incubation centers and all, where you can propose very exciting ideas, and you can vouch for fundings and all. You can, using the brand of your college, you can approach very big VCs and government organizations for a lot of fundings. There are many stories where people have gotten like crores of fundings in their 2nd or 3rd year only because they had an exciting idea. that is there. Then there is another opportunity which you can generate for yourself, because I feel today is not the time of competition, it's all about collaborations.
Yes.
Okay, so once you are in design college, let's say you enroll for a product design course. Now if you limit yourself to product design, that's fine, you are on a very traditional path. But if you collaborate with someone from other discipline, let's say remotely connected or disconnected or not even related to the field of product design. So if a product designer goes and collaborates with a fashion designer or a tailor, let's say, and both of them together they create a product which is solving something which is, before few years biotechnology was born like that, right? It was biology and technology, engineers and medical field. Nobody ever imagined before that कि ये दो fields इतनी दूर दूर की एक साथ आएंगी and they will do something, so biotech, and then we have seen what has happened to that. So in today's time, design is in that initial stage where a lot of opportunities are there to collaborate. One of the reasons that I started this podcast was to collaborate with people from different industries, so that I can get knowledge about that. So the point is that there can be multiple revenue streams or multiple opportunities which you can generate for your own self, even though you are a student. There's a beautiful second approach to looking at this, expensive design education. I was just telling to one girl who has got into animation design at NID, and she was asking me कि graduation का course है, by the end of this course I would have spent like this much amount, इसका रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट क्या होगा? मैंने उसको बोला कि देखो, मैंने जब इंजीनियरिंग किया था तो मेरी फ़ीस थी कुछ साल की 35,000 और 40,000. सो माई फीस वॉज जस्ट मतलब कम थी. सो मेरे एस्पिरेशन ना जॉब को लेके उतने ही थे कि मुझे ऐसा लगता था कि मेरी फ़ीस इतनी है, मुझे एटलीस्ट मंथली इतना पैसा कमाना है, 30,000 40,000, सो आई कैन ईजिली पे दिस डेट और जो भी है, और मैं ये कर सकता हूँ. अभी इमेजिन कि वो 35,000 की जगह पे आज मैं NID जाता हूँ या किसी प्राइवेट कॉलेज में जाता हूँ जहाँ पे आई नो कि मंथ ईयरली मेरा फ़ी 1 लाख रुपए है, 2 लाख रुपए, 4 लाख रुपए, लेट्स से 4 लाख रुपए है. तो माई एक्सपेक्टेशंस फ्रॉम माई ओन सेल्फ is higher, much higher, right?
That's the right way to judge.
So क्या होने वाला है कि मतलब आप अगर एक सस्ती अपॉर्चुनिटी ढूंढोगे, सस्ता एजुकेशन ढूंढोगे, आपके एस्पिरेशंस उतने ही लिमिट में रहेंगे. अगर एक महंगा, आई एम सेइंग कि वो डिज़ाइन एजुकेशन एक्सपेंसिव है, वो एक्सेप्ट करने के बाद वाला अप्रोच है, ठीक है? सो देन योर एस्पिरेशंस, योर एम्बिशंस, योर गोल्स, ड्रीम्स, एवरीथिंग इज गोइंग हायर. एंड दिस इज़ अ ब्यूटिफुल वे टू लुक एट ऑल दीज थिंग्स कि अगर मैं 20 लाख खर्च कर रहा हूँ और कल को कोई आता है और बोलता है कि मुझे ये लोगो बना के चाहिए, लेट्स से, और इसके लिए मैं 5,000 दूंगा तुम्हें, यू विल से कि भाई मैंने 20 लाख खर्च किया है इस पर, आई एम नॉट गोना डू दिस फॉर दिस चीप प्राइस. इससे अच्छा मैं सस्ते, मतलब
my time's value
is there. So my goals, aspirations, my ambitions have gone to that level.
Understood. But here's where I would like to tie into this particular point, is that the 5,000 rupee wala logo may be now. If you have nothing else happening, और कुछ भी नहीं है तुम्हारे पास, do it because you want to do it, to basically just show your skill. Chris Doe had mentioned this, where he said, if you're charging $3,500 for something, do work of almost, sorry if I'm getting these numbers wrong, but do work of at least 10 times the amount, like the quality, and give it to them once.
True.
Because that will get them hooked onto the fact that you have done such good work. So when they come back to you saying, see, if you want that quality, आपको इतना तो भरना पड़ेगा. So if you have nothing else to do, you do a hook. If you're already running well and going well, then you can say after that,
मतलब you are saying कि अगर खुद बैठ के पोर्टफोलियो बना रहे हो, तो इससे अच्छा है कि 5,000 रुपए का कोई प्रोजेक्ट ले लो, जिससे यू विल लर्न, तुम्हारा पोर्टफोलियो भी बन जाएगा, और 5,000 जो एक छोटा अमाउंट है, बट यू विल एंड अप अर्निंग दैट.
Yes, and on top of that you apply what Abhishek mentioned, which was drawing boundaries. Yeah, because typically the clients who come in with मेरे पास 500 का है, they have the most number of questions कि ऐसा चाहिए, ऐसा चाहिए, ऐसा चाहिए.
Yeah, that's true.
In the way I say it is like, चाहिए Mercedes but है मारुति का पैसा. तो you have to be able to draw your boundaries. हाँ मैं करूँगा ये 5,000 का, but max to max 1 change or 2 changes or no changes. This is you're using my expertise. I want to talk a little bit about the scholarship ka bit to explain. Now in Art Center I got a scholarship, and I did not know that there was a scholarship opportunity until I looked into it and I realized there is a scholarship opportunity. Otherwise I would have paid the full price. But when I applied for a scholarship, at that moment, as luck would have it, other people hadn't applied.
Oh.
So I got a 41% scholarship.
Wow. That's a huge amount.
That's
right?
a huge amount, because per term there are 3 terms. Okay, spring, summer, and fall. So per term, at that time the fees were $19,000 per term, and it was a minimum 2-year course. I did almost 3, so you can multiply and figure it out.
Wow.
But in the first year, that I had to pay 11,000 per term versus paying 19,000. That's $8,000 off. Still expensive, but it brought that down. There was another person who came in with a 70% scholarship.
Wow.
Okay, and he came in because he had the MIT ka brand on him, Massachusetts Institute of Technology ka. So that allowed him to enter in with, I think, around 70 ka scholarship tha approximately. Now in the second year, what I came to realize was that there are term-wise scholarships. So term-wise, the trustees of Art Center, sometimes trustees, sometimes external companies, sometimes even the school themselves, at that point would give, 5%, 10%, 15%, ऐसा करके they should give scholarships. So sometimes it could also be like $500, $1,000 ऐसा करके, and that's when I started building up more of my scholarship. It would be according to your grades. It could be according to your portfolio and what you learned and improved. So one of my projects, which was an app for a multi-modal transportation system for students to be able to take it. It was called Reach karke. It's on my website. When I designed that, because that caught a lot of attention, skill-wise it was not that great. See, when it comes to presentations, I hate PowerPoint. But I still presented it in a video format with Adobe effects, etc., which people loved. So because of that, etc., initially I got a $500 per term ka scholarship, and then it raised up, I think another 1,000 was added later. So little by little we built that way, and I realized that way is something that you can get.
As a student, it can matter so much.
It matters a lot.
Yeah,
it matters a lot.
$1,000 में तुम कुछ भी कर.
Absolutely.
So much, yeah.
Then on top of that, there are people, there are like trustees, or there are companies that are willing to fund you. Another thing is this. If let's say you're a design, if you're a person who's working in a design company, you're working in, let's say Tata, for example, you're working in Volkswagen, for example. Like I knew a guy who was working in Volkswagen, who basically he told Volkswagen he wants to study car design at Art Center to really boost his skills in that particular regard. So Volkswagen funded his design, his education.
Wow.
And said ki bhai tu jale, but there was some sort of he had to do some responsibility on his end to work on, because a company ऐसे फोकट का पैसा नहीं.
You can come. You have to come back and commit to working for a while or something.
Yeah. Now in that also people say that अरे पर इसके लिए तो bond, they call it signing a bond ना. But there could be instances or scenarios where I've heard कि even if you sign a bond with X company, a Y company could come and say मुझे ये designer चाहिए तो मैं इसका bond खरीद के I will bring him on this side over here.
Okay, interesting.
These are things I did not know. And
It's the same thing, like I have a friend who went to Pforzheim. So she used to work at Mercedes-Benz, and then that helped her go into,
Pforzheim,
yeah. I mean, although she went full-time after quitting
That's true,
the job.
man. Actually, I think what you are saying is very useful for the students who are listening to this, because बहुत सारी opportunities हो सकती है. It's your task to, stay alert and keep inquiring. And, I feel this trait of designer is not good. Actually, they are very shy, introvert, like most of them.
Yes,
I don't want to stereotype anyone, but I feel that whatever I have observed, including myself, I have always felt little, awkward in asking to people, or because even if I have to go to my own teacher, own professor, I would think twice, and I would feel कि अरे ये इतना stupid question है, should I even go and waste
their time.
Yeah.
But I actually, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि आपको वो मतलब उतने efforts लेने पड़ेंगे. You have to be on your toes. You have to, because Pratap Bose in his podcast had said this wonderful thing. What would be the worst thing which will happen after you ask some stupid things? The worst thing could happen is he will say no, right? But what if that person ends up saying yes? अगर
Yes.
किसी के पास जाओ और पूछो कि सर मेरे यहाँ पे कोई स्कॉलरशिप अवेलेबल है क्या? Worst thing क्या हो सकती है? नहीं है. That's
बस.
it. But अगर वो बोला कि हाँ अवेलेबल है, अभी कल ही आया है यहाँ पे, that's it. So you have cracked something which is very valuable, right?
Most of the devils in your devils that you feel are around you actually just reside in your head.
Yeah.
हाँ.
Head के आगे नहीं है.
Yeah.
And it's be shameless.
हाँ.
Okay, be mindfully shameless is what I mean. Ask ask for things that you probably are afraid of asking for, but also remember that if you're going to be asking for something, be ready to deliver it as well.
That is also true.
And be okay with rejection. Like Noah Kagan is one of the smart people on the internet, and many people have said online कि go and chase rejections. Actually, it really builds your muscle. कि जितने like you said, right? If you hear many no's, the upside of one yes offsets the downside of even 40-50 no's.
That's true.
It's like
Yeah.
fail fast, fail plenty.
वो
हाँ,
हमारा
that's right.
बायोलॉजी है कि हमें नो
Actually,
सुनना पसंद है.
मतलब एड शेरिन का एक वो रील बहुत वायरल हो रहा है आजकल, बट ही सेज दैट द प्रॉब्लम विद सोसाइटी टुडे इज दैट वी डोंट टॉक इनफ अबाउट फेलियर्स. Everybody focuses too much on success, and if you think success doesn't give you anything, like fine, it will validate your efforts or your this thing, society will appreciate you better and all those things, but on an individual level it doesn't do anything good to you. Whereas failure, no, it will ends up teaching you something. It will give you an opportunity to improve yourself. And all the successful people, whoever there are, like even we can say कि कुछ तो failure हुए हमारे lives में, उसी की वजह से हमने कुछ तो सीखा, and that's why today we are sitting here and we are doing something meaningful. And अगर मतलब I can tell there were like couple of failures, अगर वो मेरी life में नहीं आते ना, तो आज की डेट में I would have been a mess. मतलब सक्सेस ही नहीं आता, कुछ भी नहीं आता, सक्सेस तो छोड़ दो,
Absolutely.
मतलब कुछ भी नहीं आता.
Absolutely.
So I think failures, rejections are very, very important, and I think you have to, put that ego, whatever it is.
They give you data, right?
They
Data
give-
on कहाँ जाना
So many
चाहिए.
things are there, man.
Yeah.
There's just upside, as in rejection आ भी गया तो ठीक है, you are at zero. But अगर yes मिल गया तो upside उसका infinite level है.
To add to this one, another one is validation. Okay, as humans we all seek validation, but validation can be your best friend or it can be your enemy, and in most times it's your enemy.
It is.
So when you're thinking of the ROI for your design education, you're thinking of what to study. If the back to सबसे back वाला thought is going to be कि लोग क्या कहेंगे, मेरे parents क्या कहेंगे, you've started it off wrong. बिकॉज लोग तो कहेंगे ही, अगर सही भी किया तो लोग कहेंगे, गलत भी किया तो लोग कहेंगे. ऐसा ना लोगों का काम है कहना, राइट? स्क्रैप वैलिडेशन. If you feel it's right, if you feel it's the way to go, and it may be wrong as well, but you will learn eventually. Life has a way of teaching you things which you thought was correct, but it turns out to be wrong. Let that go. But if you're doing this because you want to impress somebody, something, some legacy, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Do it internal. You should be the only person validating yourself.
Yeah.
That's the healthy way to actually approach it.
Yeah.
And do it for yourself. And then other people start valuing you when you value
Yeah.
Yeah,
yourself.
वो बोलते हैं ना कि मतलब if you don't validate yourself,
कोई और
तो
नहीं
और
validate
कोई
करेगा.
क्यों करेगा?
क्यों
मतलब-
करेगा? हाँ.
If you don't, and it's the hardest thing. I'm sorry to say, there is no recipe for it. Like, if you don't love yourself, people are not going to love you. That's the truth
Yeah.
of this world. If you say मैं बुरा हूँ, at some point the world will say हाँ तू बुरा
तू
है.
बुरा है.
It's going to be like that.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
That's
And
true, man.
that this is where the imposter syndrome can also rise. When you're like, I love myself, I love myself. There is a balance. like balance boundaries.
कॉकी भी नहीं होना है,
Cocky भी नहीं होना है,
रियलिस्टिक
हाँ.
रह के, but
Yeah.
That's true.
हाँ.
Now that we have touched upon so many aspects of design education, this podcast has become long, but I'm sure if somebody is listening till this point, he would have gotten so much of value. And especially अगर कोई aspiring design student ये देख रहा है ना, I think एक रेसिपी ही मिल गई है कि कैसे इसको आगे लीड करना चाहिए and all that. There are so many things we talked about. I wanna end this podcast with a very interesting question. We three can answer individually, and we'll limit it to only one thing. Okay. So the question is, if you get a chance to go back in time and do your design education, start your design journey all over again, what would you do that one thing differently, which you feel that it would have made a huge impact in your careers?
Okay, there are many things, but he asked for one, so I'm giving you one. I would take. So I've taken a lot of risks, but I would take more risks.
Okay.
I would. If when I the vision that came to my head when you asked me this question was I looked back to Thailand days when I was in Bangkok. In Bangkok, when I was learning to do design, etc., while I did extracurricular stuff, I focused only on product design. But there were multiple different opportunities coming to me beyond design as well to sit and do छोटे मोटे काम थे ये वो करके. I did a little. I took risks, but I wish I'd taken more risks in doing things that were completely out of my comfort zone. I feel like that FOMO is what got me into Art Center, and at Art Center I did things completely out of my comfort zone. But there also there was a limit that I set for myself. The one thing if I would go back to do is take more risks and be more shameless.
Awesome.
Let's go to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Two things हो गया बस.
I would also do the same thing. But yeah, Abhishek.
Yeah, totally agree with what Nishit said, but I will. I've realized that life is about, end of the day it starts from you and ends with you, right? So back in the day, I was in the cycle of looking around and gathering so much data from everyone else that I gave the least priority to what I, also wanted to bring. So I would have heard myself more, and without being too overconfident, would have really given that thing a shot and tried to use whatever I was learning, seeing, and take it towards more of internally driven motivation instead of teachers ko please karna, peers ko please karna, all that.
Validation.
Internally driven would have been better. So I would have taken that.
Validation वाला point आ जाता है वहाँ पे.
Yeah.
Awesome. I would not change many things, but I think I would start design podcast
Back in
from
the
the
day.
college days itself.
You wanted to say that.
Yeah, I wanted to say that because whatever I have seen in past 2 years, this channel is just 2-year-old, but what I have realized is कि you alone sitting in a room and hanging around with your same bunch of people, I think it limits your learning to a huge extent. And whatever I have experienced in past 2 years, I am interacting with multiple people from diverse backgrounds, and it is helping me to learn so many things. There can be very small things. जैसे किसी के पॉडकास्ट में ना मुझे कोई एक फ्रेज पता चल जाती है. It's a very small thing, but when I am giving a very important presentation, उस वक्त अगर मैंने वो फ्रेज यूज़ कर लिया, which I learned from this podcast, and it created a huge impact in that presentation. उसकी value priceless है.
Yes.
And I gave a very stupid example, but I am telling you कि this मतलब ये जो है ना हमारा मतलब एक creative mind का problem होता है कि we always seek for that comfort zone जहाँ पे ना you like to hang around with like-minded people. ये ना कई लेवल पे आपके नॉलेज को लर्निंग को लिमिट कर देता है. एंड दैट्स द ब्यूटीफुल थिंग विच हैज हैपेंड थ्रू दिस क्रिएटिंग कंटेंट ऑनलाइन, नॉट जस्ट पॉडकास्ट बट क्रिएटिंग कंटेंट, presenting it to the world for open for discussions and criticism. All those things are very valuable और वो एक डिज़ाइनर के लिए कहीं ना कहीं ज़रूरी है. बट क्योंकि आई एम टेलिंग यू कि हमने अभी सिर्फ सरफेस लेवल पे टच किया है. सोशल मीडिया का पोटेंशियल बहुत ज़्यादा है, एंड इफ़ यू आर अ क्रिएटिव पर्सन, वन शुड गेट इनटू यू नो social media, understand the power of it, put yourself there, ask for criticism, ask for your, you know, it will help you in so many levels. I don't want to go into a lot of details, but yeah, if I have to do something different, I will start creating content from the early days of my career. If you want to add anything to that, it's okay.
I think what you mentioned about the comfort zone is, I mean, it applies to all forms of life.
On that, you know, very conclusive, very beautiful, light note, whatever we just said, I think this podcast has been a gem of a conversation. Honestly, अगर मैं college में होता और मैं ये podcast सुनता, तो it would have given me lot of value. So thanks for doing this, guys. I know I have consumed lot of your time, but I'm honestly telling you, this was worth it. This was very valuable, and hopefully अगर अब तक जो भी लोग सुन रहे हैं जिनको वैल्यू मिली है, let us know in the comment section कि कौन सा पॉइंट आपको सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पैक्टफुल लगा. यू नो, इट विल ऑल्सो गिव अस द पॉइंटर कि ये चीज़ें इंपॉर्टेंट थी. इट विल ऑल्सो गिव अस लॉट ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस in shooting and creating such kind of content in future. So let us know. And with that, thank you once again. Thanks for doing this, guys.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.